Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Ryan Dunigan.
And we have finally breached the big 650 episodes in total. And me and Ryan are like, oh, we got to do something like this. Like, well, let's just do a countdown of our favorite comics / graphic novels / mangas and all that kind of stuff. All thrown into one fun thing. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be a cool one to do. You know what I mean? Because we always talk so much of good stuff of comics and want like that, but then it's kind of fun to like really sit down and think, like, what are the ones that really stand out at least the most to you? And I know we've got our list here and so on, and for like the last, I wrote this up like a week ago, but I keep thinking like, do I want to switch this around? Do I want to do that? I'm not too sure.
One point in time when I first suggested this idea, I said my top 5 and your top 5, just to make it easy, just so we'd have too long of a list. But there's too many I kept on, like, it was kind of hard to like just narrow it down to 5, because you don't want it to be too sameish, but at the same time you also want to be honest. You want to come in with all like this fake enthusiasm for a book you like, but it's not really your favorite for the sake of it, so you just kind of like, well, 5, then you said maybe you should make it 10. I'm like, you're right, we can make it 10. It's not a movie. I don't think we'll be talking about it as long. We're not like, it's probably I imagine we have a couple of the same books, but not all the same books, so it's not going to be like we're not as, won't be going on forever.
Yeah, so no, I think that was the way, because even when we said top 5, I literally wrote 10 out. That was just kind of how it went. It was like, up. I'm like, then I was like, I could reorganize this later, and then I was like, 10's a good number for this.
Well, it was just hard to like taking certain things off. Like, I really like to put this one, but I also like to put that one. And then even with 10, I was like, oh wow, I probably could have done a 20, but we'll keep it at 10. Maybe at some point, we could do another one. It doesn't have to be like a big landmark episode. We could do like, because for books that didn't make it onto this list, not another top 10, maybe like top 10 Marvel books, top 10 DC books, something kind of like that, just to, maybe give some shout out to the other ones.
Yeah, I kind of agree there too, because there's some of those ones like that where, I feel like they could fit in there, or some you feel like, oh, I feel kind of bummed I didn't have that, but whatever. I guess that's just how it goes. But well, you want to start rolling with this list? You want to start off at your number 10?
I'll start off with my number 10. Now, this is a book that I got basically right as I was kind of getting into comics. Like, maybe not like year 1, but around that time when I was just kind of getting into comics a bit. And that book is Midnight Nation by, I got them stacked here, 9 of 10 of them, because one of them's on digital, but yeah. Midnight Nation by Michael Starzewski. I have trouble pronouncing his name. He's the guy who had that really that big landmark Spider-Man run in the early 2000s, and he wrote Babylon 5.
Is that the dude who? Okay, you say Spider-Man. I almost want to say I just read through some of these ones, like the literally like 98 to like 2002. Like he has the Spider-Man issue where 9/11 happens.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to put that on him, but everything else is really good. Yeah.
Well, this is what I know. This is kind of off topic from the book you just chose, but since you brought that up, I literally just read through that like whole series or something like that recently, and they're really good Spider-Man books. But this is what, like, when that 9/11 issue happens, literally the issue beforehand, that's the one where Aunt May figures out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, because she like busts into like his like shitty apartment and stuff, and she sees Peter just laying there bleeding out and fucking like bandaged up.
His underwear,
in his underwear, and there's just a ripped up Spider-Man costume, and she just grabs the costume, and she's like sitting out in the park, like 80 years old, being like, the fuck is going on? This thing that I've hated for 42 fucking years is my fucking nephew? Jesus Christ. And then it's like literally next episode, planes crash right into the building. It's like I just feel like Aunt May's going through way too much. Because 9/11 is one of those ones, like, to everybody else in the U.S., it's a big deal. But if you're in New York City itself, that is chaos right there. So she just learned Peter Parker is Spider-Man. 9/11 happens. And then it's like the following issue, she's like, I've been sent out this park for, the last, 48 hours or so. I figured out you're Peter. I saw 2 planes hit a building. I thought it was best not to leave. I'm just going to sit here and just wait this out. I thought Tony Stark had it, but that fuckface didn't obviously get there in time, So I'm sitting here. I've learned that Peter Parker and all this stuff is, you're Spider-Man. It's all come together. I mean, me and Uncle Ben thought you were gay at first, and now I'm kind of relieved that that's okay.
I'm an older generation. You understand, right?
I love how she mentions that line to him. Like that kind of makes it better. But Spider-Man, I don't know. You know.
Well, I just like the idea of just like she said, just slow zooming of her sitting on the bench in the park, like trying to contemplate life, and also just meanwhile at the World Trade Center, boom, just like,
so it's just like I felt like for Aunt May, I'm like, there's too much that just happened all at once here. Like, you know what I mean? Like those issues like could not have been timed out to be back to back, like just two ginormous events happening all at the same time.
We'll get to the main topic in a second, but just since you brought that up, because he's a fantastic writer and I really like this run. I'm actually working my way through it right now. I don't have it all, but I'm working my way through it. And every volume I've read so far, I've read up to volume 6 of his run, and everything I've read so far is great. He has a really good understanding of the character. Even though I know 9/11 happened in the Marvel 616 continuity, I view that issue as non-canon because I can't imagine a world where trade towers go down, Magneto, Kingpin, and Doctor Doom all take a moment to take a moment of silence and shed a tear. I can't fucking fathom that. So that to me is like they're looking at this like, really? Just 2 fucking planes did this shit? We've been trying too hard. I was shifting tectonic plates with like Thor's hammer. I was doing all this shit, you know? So it's like, you know.
Well, because they literally have like the slow zoom, and I know it's a comic book, but like on like Doctor Doom's face, like he's the Native American in the 70s ad where people are throwing trash out the window. It's just that part. Well, yeah, as I said, like because you've mentioned that many years ago. I remember when you first got that book or something like that. So it's like, I just happened to stumble across this. So it's like, oh shit, this is where this issue is. Like it all kind of came together like in one moment. I'm like, I'm gonna find Doctor Doom crying about the trade towers or something like that. You know,
there it is.
There it is. There's that scene he always talked about. And it's yeah, as I said, I look at that one as kind of like an off thing because it literally. You know, it's just like a little commemorative, you know, issue for that. But just the fact that it butts up against the previous issue, Aunt May figures out Spider-Man. Like, I think that's just like, I'm surprised she didn't just have a heart attack in fucking Central Park and that was it.
Well, even just like Spider-Man, just like after getting like his ass kicked by that fucking vampire thing, he's like, okay, I'm gonna go handle 9/11 now. Goes back like, oh, I'm beat as I was. Lays back down.
Hey, yeah. who took my costume?
As we were, yeah. No, I honestly view that as a non-continuity thing, or maybe even something like a few weeks later or something like that. That's how I view that. Just because, not to dismiss it, something like as big as that, but it's just more of just like. It's just the supervillains standing there being like, wow, this is really sad. Like, you guys did this shit you guys do this shit every other Tuesday. What are you fucking talking about?
It's weird because it's literally one page that you could probably just pull that one page out and just leave the entire rest of it there. Totally fine. Mm-hmm. Just have the Avengers and Spider-Man and Fantastic Four and X-Men. Just have them like, you know, helping out the police officers and firefighters. Like that's all you needed. Like you didn't need to have the villains stand and they're not even doing anything. I think they're just standing there like, oh, this is fucking this is sad. You're gonna help out Magneto with those powers? No.
I actually
sucks to be you, I guess.
If one, I thought he was there. Maybe he wasn't. I thought I remember seeing Kingpin. I don't remember.
No, he's there because it was three of them. It was Kingpin, Magneto, and Doctor Doom.
It's just like the most three, like Magneto and Doctor Doom I get, but Kingpin, that's like a few steps below. Let's be honest. But all right,
well, Kingpin's probably pissed because he's like I had half that tower rented out.
yeah, exactly. So that's probably why he's bad. That's probably why he's shedding a tear.
They should have had him crying as he's looking at his stock report.
That's probably the reason why I was going to say. That's probably the reason he was there and he was sad. And then like, you know, maybe like Magneto and Doom were coming over to play like, I don't know, some like Rampage on an N64 or something like that. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, maybe Doctor Doom was getting nostalgic. Maybe he rented out an early office there. There's a little bit of nostalgia in there.
I don't know why they'd be playing Rampage. Actually, no, PS2 would have been out by then, so they probably weren't playing it in N64. They probably would have. They were playing, I just got a PS2. You guys want to come on over and play Tekken Tag? Okay, it's probably that. But, anyway, way, 10 minutes in. Yeah.
Yeah, 10 minutes in. Back to the actual book you were talking about.
So the book's called Midnight Nation, and glare, and it is a Top Cow book. And the thing about this,
I always liked Top Cow. I just gotta mention that. Like, that's one of those companies that only existed for like 10 years or so, but they had some pretty sweet stuff.
They it's not as like, I mean, they do draw the woman in the book really hot, but it's not like a typical kind of like, Michael Turner Witchblade type of book, which Top Cow was really known for, or Tomb Raider. It was more of like it starts off as one thing. It starts off as kind of like a guy who's a crime scene investigator, looking into some murders. And he's basically shutting everyone out of his life. He got out of a bad relationship. He got out of a relationship, and he's just focused in on work and work only. And this thing happens where he suddenly finds himself just stuck in a parallel world. Like, it's our world, but people can't see him. The streets are barren, all this stuff, and he's getting attacked by like these green men covered with tattoos. And the thing is if you reach this point where you're kind of invisible to the world, where no one sees you anymore, and you're more or less gone and non-existent to the world, you basically disappear into this sub-world. And he's trying to find his way back, and he basically has only so much time. I think he has to make it from one side. I'll be honest, I read it. It's been like probably 10 years since I read it, but it had a big impact on me. He basically has to make a journey from one side of the world from one side of the country to the other. I think he has to make it from, New York to California, Los Angeles. I think that's what it is, or vice versa, one or the other. And basically, as they go, he meets this lady named Laura who's guiding him along the way, and she's done this a couple times. And there's like kind of some biblical undertones, like this is kind of linked to God and all that. At some point, they meet Lazarus from the Bible. There's hints that it's basically purgatory, and these creatures, these people, they're called the men. These green people are basically, they work for Satan or something like Satan. So it sounds kind of like a horror. It kind of is, but it's more of a thing on mental health, depression, and just finding happiness. And so he's basically, in order to save his soul, he has to try. No one's ever made it. So he's basically traveling with Laura across the country. And the longer the longer it goes on, the more stir crazy he starts to get. So it's really good book. It was probably one of the first comics I bought at the time that wasn't like a big like Marvel or DC book. It just really stood out to me.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a really interesting one there too. And as I said, just been reading those Spider-Man ones. That writer guy, I really liked all the stuff that he had anyway. So that kind of makes me more interested in more of the stuff he's done. So no, that's cool. That sounds like a neat one. And plus, it's Top Cow. Because I'll almost say this, I have one book that I actually have it on my honorable mentions, but since you mentioned Top Cow, I'll just say it, is the Danger Girl, because that's, I think, the Top Cow ones, too. Because I like that, because Danger Girl is just one graphic novel run, realistically, if you add them all up, and that's in Top Cow and whatnot, just, female Charlie's Angels meets 007, pretty much, and that's kind of what it is. But I think that's a cool company, so whenever I do run across those books, I get kind of excited, because, they have sort of a different flair than other things do.
To give it an idea of when I bought it at a Borders. So there you go. But then also on top of it, it's also I read the afterword of it, and it was a very personal, like it was a very personal story to the guy. Like when he was going through depression after he broke up with someone he loved, and he was like borderline suicidal and all this and that. He just went for walks at night, and the walks went on to like 3 or 4 in the morning. And he says, it's weird. There are people I bumped into that had like night jobs they had night jobs and like graveyard shifts, and you wouldn't see them out during the day, only this time. And then there's also like just people that just came out and lived life at this time when most other people are sleeping. And it just seemed like there's this other world to me, because I would never see these people outside in daytime, just night, it just like really early in the morning. So before the sun's even out. So that was one of the things that inspired him, and going on these walks and just meeting people, talking to people in coffee shops at like 2 a.m, 3 a.m, or just walking around his city or whatever. And this idea came to him.
Yeah, interesting like that. Just you got all these ideas together and so on. No, that sounds like a cool, interesting one. I'll have to look that up because I've never read that before. But yeah, cool. I like that. Your number 10 right there. Well, I guess going on down the list, I'll start with my number 10, and I'm going to go with a book that just to me it stands out. It's just a very cool, almost. It's an old book. It's probably the oldest book on my list, but. It's like one of those ones that kind of I feel like starts almost, you would say, kind of, sounds weird to say it, but like sort of the modern comics as far as like, they kind of go from being almost, not saying there's not ones before this that are like this, but this one feels like, it's generally got some serious stuff going on in here, and it's a cross-country road trip adventure and so on like that. And that's Green Lantern, Green Arrow's Traveling Heroes, which is the one that I always tell DC when they ask me and they have the fill in the blank for what, animated movie you want next. It's always this one, And it's one of those books I'll say, it's not a perfect book the whole way through, of course, because it's 600 pages or something like that, 400 and something. It's a thick one. So it kind of goes where there's some really great issues. You have the ones, of course, like the big ones that stand out where, there's the one black dude asking Green Lantern, he's like, you've helped out the purple man, you've helped out the orange man, you've helped out the tie-dye man, but what have you ever done for the black man? And Green Lantern's like, oh, geez, I guess you're right. Gosh, what have I done? I've been in space this whole time. Where have you been? Yeah, I've been right here waiting for you to do something. Give me that ring. I'll show you. I'll fix up Chicago or wherever the hell we are right now. You know what I mean? And so on like that. So it's got those ones. It's got Speedy, of course, like the poster you used to have behind you, doing the heroin where Green Arrow walks. He's like, Speedy, what are you doing?
As soon as the office is done, that's going back up behind me.
So it's got some real big of those, but I love it's Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, so the artwork's fantastic, the story writing's really detailed and so on like that, and it's just those guys coming in like that very very it's late 60s. I think it's 68 to like 72, but it's almost like the changeover from like, in a sense, like you would say the era where comic books were kind of made for kids to being like, oh shit, comic books are kind of like the audience grew with it already at this point, and we're going to start making books that are literally for like if you were 20 years old in the 70s and you still read comics, and the stories kind of have a little bit more heart and they got a little bit more world life events and so on. This is the point where Green Arrow's like, yeah, he's like, I got rid of my money, I live on the street, hey, everybody down here loves me, I'm pretty cool, I'm hip, I hang out at the coffee houses and so on like that, I mean, like I like jazz.
I tipped a beatnik once, like, okay, cool. That's
exactly. I got a lot of black friends now. I'm pretty cool.
And I make eye contact with them when I talk. That's really important, all right?
Yeah,
That's how you know I'm woke. That's how you know I'm ahead of the curve. Like, thank you, that's great, Ollie. That's great.
Thank you, Green Arrow. Thank you for mentioning that. I'm like Green Lantern here, fucking flying in space. You know what I mean? Like living the fucking dream of a police officer pig. You're like, oh, well, space cops is what the name I like to use. Yeah, that's what you would like to use.
I do think it's funny just because it's in context. Like right now in the comics, Hal Jordan is kind of known as like the rebel, is the guy who comes in like, whatever, man, I'm not taking any shit. I do what I fucking want to do. He's kind of the wild card depending on the iteration of the Justice League. But at this point, he was like I'm just a good old fashioned space cop. Hello there. Fuck you, pig. Oh, I tried.
Yeah, because that's what I thought. It starts off. It's like Green Arrow's like, let me show you the city, man. Like we'll do it my way. It's like you're literally just about as rich as Bruce fucking Wayne. You're like, yeah, they don't need to know that. Didn't you just get drunk on your yacht when you were like fucking 22 and fall off of it? And everybody's like, Jesus Christ, good thing that guy's dead. And then 5 years later, you show up back on this island.
Hey man, look, I help out the worker man. I tip 18%. Okay, I'm gonna say that's pretty fucking generous. All right.
Yeah. I mean, they gotta come by and bring me coffee about 6 times before I get to that number, but still.
By the way, what have you done for the black man? I know you've done a lot for the orange man. Oh, this again, every fucking time.
Yeah, here we go again. But he's like Green Arrow's like, yeah, I was a producer on Shaft. You know, I put down a different name, of course. You know, but no, like that book though, it just in itself, I think it's just kind of a fun one. If somebody wants to dive into older comics, you know, and really go back to the 60s, 70s, I always think that's the one I would like pass to them. You know, I'm like, try this one out. You know, it's going to be something you're not really used to, but it still reads good. You know, because sometimes some of the, you know, you get some of the older books. Don't get me wrong, I can like them for what they are, but you know, they'll have like almost a little too heavy a dialogue throughout them, like almost like really describing everything to people. And I don't know if that was a thing. I always assume in the 50s and 60s. That when they were kind of going like, oh, you know, if you're an idiot if you read comic books, well, they're like, well, you know what, I guess we need to put more words in here for kids, so let's just really fill like half the panel up with like words, so they really have to do out quite a bit of reading.
You're paying attention, idiots, like that as you're writing.
Yeah, you know, so but no, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Traveling Heroes, I really like that one. I know there's actually a sequel to it, which I always kind of wanted to pick up too. I know the first like review you see on it, like, well, it's not as good as the first one. I'm like, well, I still wouldn't mind checking it out. But
is it like from the same period in time, or is it
I think it's Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams once again, or at least Neil Adams on some of them. I think it's done in like maybe late 70s, maybe early 80s, somewhere around there.
Okay.
So
I've checked that out. Fun.
Yeah,
I like. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's the one though. I would still want to see a DCU animated movie, because that's the thing is, even though the book's really long, you could condense this into like, you know, that's a perfect one for a movie where you just cherry pick some of the issues and put it together here.
Well, that series also has a little bit more of like the sense of there is the continual stuff. But then there are the ones where this is just a one-off one. Oh, they stopped in this town today, and there's some asshole who's like a logger. There's some logging company that's underpaying its workers and also fucking with the indigenous people or some shit like that. You know what I mean? They're like that was just for like one issue, and then on to the next thing. Eventually, we end up in space, but then eventually back to Earth, you know, and also eventually Black Canary joins. I think the whole Speedy thing was maybe one issue too. So
yeah,
I think that I think you could do like a condensed version of that and make a good movie out of that. I'm surprised this thing isn't higher on the list. I knew it was going to be on your list. I really like it. I know you like it more than me, but I really like it. But yeah, I think this one definitely deserves to be on the list. This wouldn't be in my top 10, but maybe my top 10 DC books in general, though.
Yeah, no, it's just it's one of those ones I really like it a lot. I almost like it in certain ways. Like, it stands out to me, I guess, more, as I would say, because I will say, if I probably thought about it hard enough, I think there's actually a Green Lantern book and a Green Arrow book that I actually like more than this. But just like all the elements in this one, just the time period, just the really cool Neil Adams artwork, just and all that kind of stuff in there, and then each story being kind of like, yeah, because each one, because it's old school, so like I don't think there's too many like, you know, continuation stories. Each one's mostly about one issue each, but they all still kind of add up to this road trip thing. It just always stands out, and I thought it would be a perfect number 10 just for the fact I feel like it's a good like entryway. Like, are you in or you out? Here we go. Here's my number 10 to start the list off.
Yeah, it's also that's a good point. It was kind of like where a lot of comics started to grow up. Like Marvel was already kind of starting to grow up a bit more, but DC was a little behind. It was catching up. And I know because I actually have, it wasn't, Denny O'Neil isn't in on there, but Neil Adams, I have like a volume of a bunch of Batman books he worked on, just a collection of Batman books he worked on from like the late 60s. And it's before he worked on this right here. And I'm expecting something like maybe not as good as Green Lantern, Green Arrow, but at the same time, I'm just like, it's going to be in the vein. But no, it's a lot of that, like, old chum, let me tell you, let's spell it out for the fucking stupid kids reading this horse shit. You know, that's kind of how it sort of comes across. But the thing is, the artwork is fantastic. So it's like, if anything, it's a cool coffee table book. Mm-hmm. But it's like, oh yeah, I guess comics, Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, they really like kicked it up a notch once this came out, at least for the DC side.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think that's just the thing about it is I think it's a good changeover one too. 'Cause, yeah, you read like Stan Lee's Spider-Man and all the X, because those ones are all pretty. You can go back and read those, the Fantastic Four, and they actually stand up pretty darn good. Those '60s ones, they don't feel too old or anything like that. They actually read almost like at a higher level in a sense than certain books do. But I do think this one right here is where it's like, oh shit, here's where comic books almost become more made for like the hardcore fan and stuff, and just a cool story overall. But that's my number 10. Going up the list, what's your number 9?
Number 9, starting off with our first of one of the big two, Kevin Smith's Guardian Devil with Daredevil.
I love that book. I have those ones, I think, on my Kindle version or whatever, Comixology, what it used to be.
This book was the first Daredevil book I ever bought. And I know a lot of people would say, how can this be on? Spoilers ahead. No Frank Miller Daredevil on here. No Frank Miller at all, actually, on my list. Not that he doesn't deserve it. He just didn't make it. But maybe people might be saying, no Frank Miller Daredevil, but you have Kevin Smith Daredevil. What the fuck? And it's more of like the first one you read and wasn't really good. There's probably better Daredevil by this point, but the combination of, like, I know Joe Quesada is kind of an asshole, but his artwork is really good, and it works really well with Kevin Smith's writing. And I just liked, it was kind of like, in hindsight, it is kind of like a fan scripty kind of thing, because it's these weird mashups, like Daredevil going against Mysterio and these kind of weird team ups, kind of like that, things you wouldn't like. And the idea of like not really knowing, my only knowledge of Daredevil being like in episode or two, they popped in the Spider-Man, the animated series, and then the Daredevil Ben Affleck movie at the time. Mm-hmm. So knowing that, reading this book, being able to follow it and still like find it amazing. So, and going out of their way and like even like not knowing who Karen was, and just the death of Karen, the fight between him and Bullseye, the whole, like, for a minute it's like, wait, is he protecting the Antichrist? What's going on here? Like this crazy shit. But it's just like, oh, Mysterio's behind it. That makes sense. Okay. And just, the way it all comes together at the end. And I just thought it was just a really fun book with a lot of emotion, a lot of heart. It's kind of like, in other Daredevil books I go to read afterwards, I really like, not as much as this one, but still other Daredevil books I have, and this book, for being my first one to read Daredevil, it kind of captured what I assumed is the feeling of Daredevil, So, yeah.
No, I totally agree there too, because I initially, I think that probably was the first Daredevil book I read too, because you let me borrow it back in the day, and then I have it now I think I said I have it digitally, I'm pretty sure. But I love that just run of all the Kevin Smith books that he had around that same time period. Because speaking of Green Arrow, his Green Arrow run is extremely good.
It is really good.
I want to say it literally continues right after another guy who has a really good run, and then Kevin Smith comes in, or it's the other way around. I can't remember. Maybe Kevin Smith goes, and then another guy takes over his. But whatever. It's a great run. I love the Batman Cacophony ones, and what's the other Batman?
Winding Gyre.
Both those ones. Like, that was a great time period. I almost kind of wish Kevin Smith would go back and write stuff, because when I did a kind of like a reread of a handful of those books, like maybe about a year ago. I did both the Batman ones, and then I did the Daredevil one as well too. And I was just like, man, these are so good. They're just like one of those ones, like I hadn't read them in probably 15 years, and then I kind of came back and was like, man, the stories stand up. They're fun. He's paired up with a great writer each time and so on like that. And then it still just has that Kevin Smith feel, like in a sense that, like, I would love to almost see him do stuff like this, and maybe just like, why don't you try his hand directing one of these ones like that? You know what I mean? But like in that kind of similar style, that would be cool.
Yeah. So Daredevil, Guardian Devil by Kevin Smith is my number 9.
Okay. So going into my number 9, this is okay. I've got a manga going on here. And with some of these ones, I will say they're a little bit different, because, it's like that's why I almost say it's like we're saying graphic novels, but I kind of say graphic novels / sometimes in mangas they kind of feels like they're like a couple in a row. But mine's Pokemon Adventures, and I guess if you had to pick it in a sense, I would say like the red and blue one. And the reason I kind of go with this is one of those adaptations that like gives you literally the best version of Pokemon you could possibly imagine, The artwork's very much like more serious and darker and so on in that old school style. Like almost like if you had like, you know, maybe like almost a PG-13. I mean, maybe not exactly that far, but like definitely much more than you would think of in Pokemon, where things are scarier. They're literally pocket monsters and so on like that. And just the fact of like the details it kind of goes through it. So if you are just a fan of Pokemon, especially Red and Blue or even the anime show, it's like you can like go through this and go, wow, this actually gives you such a great version of that whole story and adventure throughout it. And it's quite serious comparatively, and the artwork's cool, and it just, yeah, I think everything about it's just like it's the best variation of Pokemon out there.
I think it is. I remember we covered the first arc around that. We did like one volume just for the hell of it, you know, because we were doing like a Nintendo theme month or something like that. So we're like, okay, just do the first volume, call it good. I'm like, that was pretty fun. And then I kept on reading them just because like I enjoyed it. And then like, and then I mentioned to you like, oh yeah, I'm still reading. Like, what the fuck? We should be doing that for the show. I'm like, oh, I didn't know you were
fucking
waiting
reading. It's slapping out of your hand.
Like I didn't know you wanted to keep going for the show. Like, okay, I'll reread it. We can do it volume 2 next week then. Shit, I didn't know. So and yeah, and like the level of like thought that goes into even the battles of like it being kind of like, you know, a battle manga, or even like to some aspect kind of a sports manga, even the way how it kind of plays out.
Yeah, no. There's just it's just got a lot more detail and so on. And then I also think about it because once again, this thing's written at a time period when Pokemon is very fresh. There was literally just Red and Blue. There's not as much like detail. It's not like there's all these like years of lore and so on like that. So I can't remember exactly who wrote it, but whoever, you know, they're pretty much just coming in there like pretty darn fresh. Like, hey, here's this game. Here's some screenshots and so on like that. You know, you played through it, right? Go ahead and write the story. You know, the animes, because this comes out. I think this predates the anime as well too.
Yeah,
in Japan at least. You know, because these came out kind of later. That's why it's one of those ones. It feels like I kind of always wish I had this as a kid. We had that alternative Pokemon manga that they sold in like comic book form. That is still good, but not nearly as good as this one. You know, but this one here, I think it's just such a good one, and I think Red and Blue is kind of like book 1, 2, and 3. I think then Yellow's 4 and 5, and then it starts to go into Gold and Silver and so on. But I mean, it even has elements of green too, because that's like one of the cool things. It's like not only do you have the Red and Blue characters as in Ash and Gary, you know, they throw the green in there, which is the female trainer and so on like that, to kind of create literally an anime trio of characters and so on. And even Yellow's his own character too. Once it finally
they're
gets
all
there.
rivals to each other too.
Yeah, and it's still in the old timey way where it's not like we're all best friends. It's like no, this shit's real. You know, only one of us can become a Pokemon master. There could be only one. You know, so
they made you like Blue because they're there's a lag there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
They also made you, because remember before you're like fuck Gary, and then this one like, well, in this he's called Blue, but in this he's kind of cool. He's just more of like a stern like martial arts master who just takes training more serious than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then same with Red. He's not like a bumbling idiot that just somehow, some way, just falls ass backwards into every success in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, it's like, he actually is competent and he actually fucking gets shit done, and that's what I just like about it. It's just, there's just so much to love here, and I think it's one of those ones that, of course, people have seen these books. You can go to pretty much any any Barnes and Nobles or anything that's left. You can find them there and so on, but it's just like, until we read them, it's like, here's the thing, we love Pokemon forever, and it's like, oh, I've never read these books before, and I've never really met anybody else who's technically read them the same way, too, so I feel like they're kind of like lost treasure troves that people almost might even bypass, going, whatever, it's just a Pokemon book, but it's more than just a Pokemon book, let me just say that.
It's a way of life.
It's a way of life, yeah. You know what I mean? It's just, well worth reading. And even the gold and silver ones and so on, as far as I got actually, but the gold and silver ones are still really just as good. They literally continue, I think, all the way up to almost like Sun and Moon, but it goes for a while.
I remember Red and Blue being really good, and I only read up to the first game. And when Yellow comes in, it was still entertaining. I still liked it, but the best part was the first part with Red and Blue. So
yeah, those first three, and if that's how I would sum it up, if that was like a graphic novel, just combined together.
I'm sure they have an omnibus of it probably somewhere, or a box set.
I think
like
so,
that.
because I just had the regular books, but I think nowadays they sell them, and I think they come in that manga 3-pack. What they kind of do with so many things like Dragon Ball Z and Ranma and Full Metal Alchemist. But yeah, that's my number 9. So what's climbing up the list? What's your number 8?
My number 8, I don't have a physical form of it, so here's the little piece of paper I had for its placeholder for my stack. So Step by Bloody probably can't read it. Yeah, you can't read it.
You should have done like
Stop.
one of those like real quick like sketches where like it was almost like a cheap like reproduction cover, like but like drawn in like pen and ink, like ballpoint pen.
Oh, that'd be doing disrespect to this book, because one of the main reasons this book is as high is on my list is because the artwork is so good. So I'd be doing disservice. Step by Bloody Step, and it was an Image book. I do not have the author's name. I should have done that, or the artist's name. I know I follow them on Instagram. Basically, it's a silent book. You can get through this thing very quickly. It's only 4 issues. But those 4 issues are really impactful and they stand out. Basically, a little girl is born out of this plant, and there's this giant hulking like Goliath thing by her, protecting her from whatever, and basically just kind of like takes her along. And you kind of learn the story. There's no dialogue, and the dialogue that is there, it's in another language. And the thing that's even interesting about the language, there's like a key like word or like higher like symbol that keeps popping up in that, but so okay, that's like the name of the country, or that's the name of this group or something, because that's on the back of their jackets, and this symbol pops up every time this guy talks, so it just little subtle things like that. Anyway, but there's a lot of character development in it for being this book with like no dialogue. You basically see this, and I don't want to spoil the whole thing because it's only 4 issues and it's not something as well known as Daredevil or anything like that. It's a relatively new book. It came out like I think in 2022, I think. So basically this giant is protecting this little girl and looking out for her, and it is kind of like more or less sort of a parent story. This giant is just kind of like really is like looking out for it, but it's very cold. There's these moments of warmth, and the little girl is kind of more mad and kind of like feels like she's being dragged along, but you kind of have an idea of where it's going and what it's going to be. But at the same time, and I don't want to spoil it because I feel like this can be probably the shortest thing. There's not really much I can say about the book without spoiling it. All I can say is it takes place in this fantasy world where there's like technology and some steampunky, not even steampunk, more like technology they made out of magic, not even really steampunk shit. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of like very much out in the like wilderness wasteland kind of area, and just of this made up world, and just the story of this giant and this little girl. And we see in the girl's age, we realize, because there's other characters to contrast it with, the girl ages fast. It starts off when she's just like a toddler, and it ends where she is like basically in her like late teens, early 20s. So we kind of get and we have other characters there to contrast with, to realize that, oh, this isn't happening. This is happening super fast. So, but yeah, I can't really, it's more of just the artwork is so good, and what, like how much story they will tell with like no dialogue, and just the action is awesome. The character designs are awesome. It's very brutal, but it's very badass at the same time. And I just love the creature designs of the monsters they kill. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough. But the thing is, I can't really say much about it without really spoiling it, because it is a short read. It's four issues with no dialogue.
Interesting. That's almost like I remember they're speaking of Frank Miller. There's a Sin City one that's like that too, where it's like it's only one issue, but it's 22 pages or whatever of no dialogue whatsoever, just Frank Miller artwork the whole way through. You know, and it's always interesting when you kind of do that. But that's interesting to do that for an entire graphic novel. But that sounds kind of cool and so on like that. And you say it's kind of a modern Image one as well, 2022 or something.
Yeah, it's called Step by Bloody Step, and it's. I really recommend it. It's fantastic. If anything, it's just the main reason I just saw the artwork popping up on Instagram. Like, all right, I'll check this shit out. And like, oh, this really, there's no words. Oh, whatever, I'll keep going. And then like, oh, this is awesome. And I was a little sad when we got to the end, but it was kind of like short and sweet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Every so often, you might think like, I love this book, but it's long. I don't know if I can put time aside for that. But this is like, no, you could knock this out like in like 30 or 45 minutes, just enjoy the artwork and it still be impactful, you know?
That's cool. No. I'll have to take a look at that one. That sounds like an interesting one. Actually, funny enough, climbing up the list, if we keep going, I got an image book on here as well for my number 8. And the one I decided to go with is Southern Bastards, which is one of those.
I have volume 1, yeah.
Yeah, and there's 4 volumes of it, and they're all worth having. Each one kind of adds to each other, but it gives you. It's almost like a story kind of in the vein of like a Walking Tall, but it's about, and it's strange, it's about like football. It seems like it's one of those ones like, you know what comic book I need to read? Something about football, but it's literally like this dude comes back to his hometown after like, I don't know, 20 years or something like that, and they got this like boss hog guy who like runs like the local high school football thing, but he runs the entire town like pretty much a gangster and so on like that, and everything's under his thumb and so on, and he's not a good guy whatsoever. But ironically, you get to the second book and it's like his whole origin story, so it kind of, you see how he gets to this point, and they do a good job of that as well too. But yeah, just brutal and kind of violent, and just like all these like really sort of shitty things this guy does, you know, but at the same time, you sort of watch this kind of development of this town, and this guy who, even though he hasn't been here in 20 years, it's like he still feels like, well, this is still part of my town too. I kind of like almost serve out some justice and so on, even though he's not really getting along with anybody. And it's been a moment since I've read these. I haven't probably read these since they actually came out, and probably 2014 or something like that. But this was one of those books that it just always stuck in my mind, like how good this series was and how good I look forward to when each issue came out. And I've actually done that thing where I'll look every once in a while. I'm like, did they ever make another one past 4? And they never have. And once in a blue moon, I'll check again just to see, because I would love to see any more of this. But because I almost want to say the 4th book, it transfers over because stuff happens. But like the 4th one, it's like the dude's daughter actually shows up into the town, and she's like, I want to say she was a police officer or something like that, you know. But and she's investigating kind of what happened, you know, throughout the previous couple books. But yeah, the whole way through, it's great. It's intense. You know, it's very Southern and very like, you know, that football dominance, which is something that like I'll say like in California, like high school football is sort of like a whatever. It's just sort of there. Like if you know, but like I know in some of those other states, like that is like the town is like that makes it's that Friday Night Lights thing and so on like that, you know. Maybe it's that thing in California. Yeah, Friday Night Lights. You know, you got 10 other things going on that same night too. You know, even especially other sports as well. But you know, it's maybe that it's more of that thing is like almost like as a foreigner myself looking at these, you know, I can't remember where it's at. They're like almost in like Arkansas or something like that. I see looking into this town. It's interesting. Is this what it's really like here? This dastardly fellas here just tearing it up. Does he really have that much control and power? And he's really that bad and even racist and even like terrible as a man this guy is? It's a page turner. I have to see where this is going.
I've only read volume 1 and I loved it, but I haven't come across any other volumes yet. But I'd like to. I really loved volume 1, and the idea of like, cause I could think of like some small valley towns like that have like the whole like football's a big deal here. If you're not doing, what are you doing if you're not Friday night if you're not at the football game? Like fucking anything else, but like. But like at the same time, I know it's in the South or whatever, or even like more in the Midwest, that's probably a bigger deal. But I know I know what you mean. Like I can think of some small towns in California where it's a big deal, but at the same time, it's still not the majority. You know, they probably don't really have like a boss hog figure running shit. You know.
Yeah, exactly, you know, and I think that's just the thing about it. There's so much kind of, as I said, it's one of those ones I'm just kind of trying to remember all the, like the small stuff. I can remember like the overallness and how much I really liked it, and just the tone and feel of it. Especially Walking Tall, I think is almost one of the best ways. If you kind of combine Walking Tall with football and so on like that, you know, maybe even like slightly a little bit like Roadhouse, even though I know it's kind of different, but like it has those kind of vibes throughout this thing, and yeah, just watching this dude. And then plus, you've only read the first book, but I will say the second book's really interesting because it goes into that whole Boss Hog guy's, like, upbringing, and it's one of those ones where you're like, oh, it's interesting just seeing how this dude kind of gets to the point he is, where you think of him being such the shitty bad guy in the first book, and then like when he's the main character of the second one, and you kind of see how it is, it gives you kind of like that, well, you know, he's not a good guy, but I mean, I kind of see how he got there in a sense, you know, and he's trying to hold, you know, come hell or high water, you know, this coaching position down, you know, and yeah, no, I think it's one of those books. I'd like to actually pull them out again and do a reread because they were so good. And as I said, they've stuck out to me this whole time. You know, how good these books were. You know, just different. And the fact that like it's that thing that it's weird. It's like in real life, I don't really care much for sports, but if you make a movie or a comic book about it or something like that, I can get interested.
Well, also if you bring in like death and murder and guns too.
Yeah, there's some other elements it takes, but like all of a sudden it's like here we are. But yeah, I'm gonna say number 8. My number 8, Southern Bastards.
All right, so that puts us now at 7. Just chugging along here. My number 7 is not a very original take, but a very original choice. But at the same time, I think there's a reason why some people like it. Kingdom Come by Mark Waid and Alex Ross.
That's actually, I'm kind of glad you threw that one on there. I didn't even think about that being on your list, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, well, it's a book I kind of jumped on a little late. I know that it's a classic for a lot of people, and it's a book that I knew about, and I was like, I'll get to it, you know. And then like around like I want to say like 2020 or so, I finally, because I actually bought it from a used bookstore, and it was just sat in my stack for probably like 3 or 4 years. And like, I'll get to that one. Yeah, I know. It's classic. I know. I get it. You know, just the thing. You just put it off, and then you finally read it. Like, oh no, this was a really good fucking book. This is really good. And plus, it's like one of those things. Like, yeah, I know Alex Ross. He's like one of the greatest artists of all time. I get it. But then you actually see it. But the thing is, I realize, I'm really only used to seeing Alex Ross do a couple of covers here and there. Mm-hmm. I'm not really used to seeing him do a whole complete graphic novel with full backgrounds and characters. I know he's done like a Fantastic Four book, and he's done full-on graphic novels, I know. But on average, I feel like you generally see Alex Ross's work is covers, usually, you know what I mean, or movie posters. So getting this and then reading through it and realizing, this is kind of like DC Civil War before Marvel Civil War, but it's better. And it actually is a little bit more optimistic, because at the end you find out, Batman's not actually being a dick. He's an inside man. He's not being a dick. Like, fuck you, Diana. Fuck you, Clark. I'm gonna go hang out with the Shazam boy. He's not doing that just to be a dick. He was their end guy. Like, oh, okay, you know. And it's just one of these books. Like, I can't tell you beat for beat everything that happened, because it is kind of like a war book, and you know, this issue to go here to battle this person, this issue to go there. But it's one of these books that just like, it's so gorgeous. The artwork, the every so often you kind of wonder how cheesy would it look if they made like literal transitions of these characters in live action, and you think like that probably look a little cheesy, and I think it would be hard. But Alex Ross does something, makes them look really good, and kind of also has a little bit of this Art Deco kind of vibe, like this old school cinema vibe to it too, which kind of at least comes that way to me, at least, you know. And I just think it really helps everything. And plus, I like the narrative device of a preacher who's lost faith being kind of a Christmas caroled via the Green Spectre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's just, you mentioned kind of that old look of like Alex Ross's books and so on. I feel like his artwork too, because I've actually read some of his, like the Fantastic Four ones he had or something like that, and everything about them, they always look like they were like movies shot in the 50s, but like really high budget movie. Like if Stanley Kubrick did like a movie in the 50s on like this kind of stuff, like they always remind me of like that kind of look to things, and just this cool spectacle. And that's one of those books too that like, for the longest time, I think I had like half that book. I had like the first, like, because that series used to be split up into multiple graphic novels, you know, initially, and I had like a half of it. I'm like, I need to get that second half one of these days so I could kind of see what the end was. And then I got the digital version of it and so on like that, and you know, the whole complete collection. And it is something special. The story's good. Yeah, it does have that Civil War vibe to it and everything too. And plus the artwork itself there's really nobody else who kind of paints like Alex Ross does and so on.
Yeah. And even just kind of like the subtleties of just like they're older now, but like at the end of all places, they're going to planet Krypton for dinner, for lunch, and like so just like Clark is just like, I can't believe this shit. He just how much he looks like a jacked Hank Hill, here at the end, So it's just, I don't know, just a little thing right there. But yeah, no, it's a book with a lot of character. You think how like grandiose and epic they're making it look. It's going to be like, because that's something I don't want to bring something down to raise to. I don't want to bring something else down to raise up something else. But I think sometimes you look at something that's trying to be so epic and grand, it kind of lose sight of actually having character. Like even though I like a lot of his movies, Zack Snyder. I think something wrong with a lot of his DC movies is there is like kind of like a little bit of I wouldn't have thought this at the time when I saw it, but now looking back, I kind of see it a bit more. There is kind of an emptiness to it. They're like, it looks cool, the action's good, the cinematography is fantastic, but there's not as much of emotion there. And if it's implied, well, they should have made it more clear. And this is something where it's the emotion is there. And it's very clear what's happening the whole time, and there's still a little bit of a heart and humor to it in parts.
Yeah, no, it has that depth and so on, and it's even with Zack Snyder movies. Like the more I think about him, I feel like Zack Snyder does a really good job if he just follows somebody else's comic book. I think it's when they get to the movies where they start doing a little bit more original type stuff. It's don't get me wrong, I still like them, for what they are and so on, but there is a little bit like lost in translation there. It's kind of like 300. You just followed the Frank Miller book. You know what I mean? Watchmen. You pretty much just followed, the book, and it's like, yeah, that works that way. But then once he starts to get his own ideas thrown in there a little bit more and starts to kind of mishmash some things together, yeah, there's a little bit missing, in a sense. As I said, I still like him probably more than the average Joe, but. Yeah, I know what you mean. They're close, but no cigar almost. It's like there's still a little bit more it could have went.
I enjoyed the Snyder cut, but I enjoyed it. It wasn't like what I think a Justice League movie should be, but this right here is what I think a Justice movie should be. It should feel like is epic and is grand, but still have heart, and you should still walk away having like faith and hope. Not faith as in God, but yeah. Faith shit's going to turn out okay.
Faith in Batman is what you should have,
Bad Jesus.
Yeah, bad Jesus. The second coming of, the third coming of Christ was Batman. Not Superman. Stop thinking it was Superman. He ain't your fucking God. It's me.
He could be Joe, all right? He got the room.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking even of Kingdom Come, though, that's like the last kind of like really major book that DCU's never made an animated series of. When I really kind of think about it,
I think they're afraid to touch it because it's Alex Ross's artwork.
Well, they've already touched the other like ones that you would almost say, they've done Dark Knight Returns, they've done Long Halloween and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like, I feel that this is the one, though. At some point, you're gonna have to give it the old, epic. Like I feel like 3-parter movie, kind of like they did with the whatever, Crisis on Infinity Earths. Give it something that's.
It's that artwork though. It's that Alex Ross artwork. It's one of the reasons why when people say that, like comic books are not as good of a media, like something like Alex Ross makes it so like no dude, no he show me. And I mean, don't get me wrong, he's not my personal favorite artist, but he's one of the greatest of all time. And show me someone. It's like one of those things like, hey, we're gonna make the only way. And it was actually, I can't take this idea. I believe it was God, I'm trying to blank on his name. He was cool. He came on our show and we went on. He used to do comics indie comics club podcast. What was his name? British dude. I forgot his name. He was cool.
God, I feel bad that I've just drew a total blank all of a sudden. Yeah.
Let's put you on the spot. He was your co-host for a go on.
for only like 3 years. So, yeah, I don't know. I just
Frank.
just drew the ultimate.
Not Frank. Not. God. You edit this out. This is embarrassing. Sorry, I mean to put you on the spot, but the dude, he came on our show. We went on his shit. I went on Indie Comics Club for 1 or 2 episodes, and then he came on our show, and he actually pitched the idea of retelling Kingdom Come, but in the Bruce Timm art style. And I'm like, you know what? It's not the same as Alex Ross, but that's probably the closest thing you can get, because at least it's punching the nostalgia buttons in your head, as the replacement.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, and I think that's kind of the right thing to kind of do there, and so on. And
Project Savior's his comic. I remember his comic is called Project Savior.
Craig Johnson. God, I don't know why. I feel kind of bad. Well, because I think whenever I look him up, and I always go for I look at Project Savior and everything like that. And I was like, oh god, I just got put on the spot there. And it's just once since we haven't he's been kind of doing his own thing. We haven't really talked in a good moment. It's like, oh, I just drew a total blank. That's what happens though. That's I'm gonna blame it on that Dunbar thing that you can only remember 200 people, and then next thing you know, the people you meet 50 new people, and then that's it. But yes, Craig Johnson, good book, Project Savior, fun guy, always to talk comic books and so on about, and he's always very, very keen on all the DC stuff for sure.
Yeah, like his pitch sounded good, but beyond that, Kingdom Come,
Kingdom Come, I think that's a good one to have on the list, and I think that's a perfect one there. Well, going up the list here, my number 7. I actually have 3 things written on it. So, but I think I know what I'm gonna go with. I think I'm gonna go with Kyle Stark's Sex Castle. And comparatively, it's like if you took Kingdom Comes, if you thought like, man, here's some artwork. If you really want to show people that comic books are not for idiots and so on like that. And then don't get me wrong, I think Kyle Stark's, I love the way his artwork is, but it's that one if you try to show it to somebody, but like this is what comic books are, and be like, dude, that looks like a 10-year-old drew it. You know what I mean? But I think that's
Sex Castle.
That's what makes it look kind of cool though. And he's the dude that he actually did a bunch of the Rick and Morty when they had the initial run of those comic books. He was the artist and writer on those. And I just knew him because I just randomly picked up another book that he had. I think it was called Rock Candy Mountain. And I was like, this just looks interesting. And it was about like hobos, like, this hobo network and so on like that. And going on these cross-country adventures. And then like I met the dude I remember because like he had the booth once at one of the Comic Cons that I was at, and he was there, and like I was like, oh dude, you're the dude. Like he had the Rick and Morty stuff. You could see that's what they're really selling. I was like, I'm like, don't get me wrong, I like Rick and Morty, but out of the way there, like, dude, your original books are fucking awesome. And he's like, oh, thanks, man. So we got to talking and so on like that, and he was all like, well, if you liked Rock Candy Mountain and maybe one of the other ones, like, did you ever fucking check out Sex Castle? And I'm like, no. So he's like, well, here you go, have this. And I gave him a Pizza Boys comic and so on like that. I don't know if he ever read it, but I like to assume he did. And Sex Castle is pretty much just like an homage to like 80s action movies and so on like that. I mean, you literally look at the cover of the book and it's like the dude's kind of looks like a Snake Plissken, or Snake from I say Snake Plissken, but Snake straight out of Escape from New York and so on like that. But if you combine that with a little bit of Roadhouse and Die Hard and so on like that, and gave it just some extra comedy, where here's this guy who's the greatest assassin ever, he just wants to retire, but of course everything keeps coming back to him and whatnot like that. And people there's trying to be love interest and so on like that, and he can't handle it and so on there. And he gets to this small town. Once again, I have 2 small town books, I guess, in a row where the guy comes to save the day. But I like that storyline. I mean, like, one man could save it. It sounds like a Chuck Norris movie, really, but like Sex Castle, it's all in black and white, and I'm always partial to black and white. Actually, I have a few books on my list now that I noticed that are all black and white ones. And the artwork's one of those ones, as I said, if you just showed it to somebody who wasn't into comic books, they would look at it like, this doesn't look very good. It's kind of like showing a Frank Miller book to somebody at first. You'd be like, the hell is this stuff? It's like, well, you got to get really into comics before you can really appreciate Frank, or else he just kind of looks like, he's like, is this guy special ed and takes a lot of drugs? And he was like, no.
He might by this point. Yeah.
He might. Sometimes
I strikes again. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was even reading through a little bit of Ronin again too, and I'm like, that one's like, it's fucking really all over the place. I'm like, it's kind of like, it's a cool book, but it's like, it's kind of hard to comprehend because there's just like way too much weird shit going on at once there, and his drawings are almost overly detailed in the wrong way. Not detailed like being like making them better, detailed making them look harder to tell what's going on. yeah, it's like that's kind of it. But Sex Castle, it's really fun. I've read that one about 3 times. Like I pull it out every once in a while when I want some like drawing inspiration and so on like that because the story's fun. It's a nice read. It's got all the like if you just love 80s action movies, there's a lot of good references in there and so on. We'll just like having a good time with it and really just anything. I don't think there's a single book of his I'm missing in the collection. They all kind of fall in that same fun action vibe. And so on, with like a little bit of goofy humor throughout it. But yeah, I'm gonna go with. I think I'm gonna choose Sex Castle. As I said, I'll throw one of my other ones on an honorable mention if we have that there because they're close. They're damn close. But I think that's the one I'm choosing.
I remember now that you talked about it. Remember you telling me about this book. Yeah, sounds pretty cool. I have to check that one out. So, Sex Castle is your number 7.
7.
So my number 6 is this one. At the time, I think it would have been like, dude, yeah. But now, for some reason, people are kind of having second thoughts about it. But I still love it. Wolverine, Old Man Logan.
Yes, that's a great one. Yeah, it's that's what's the thing is because I feel that book has just hit that time frame where it's like it's at that like old enough to be like, is it really that good? Think about it, guys. And I think for me and you, I know this is your choice, and I'm already rambling, but I think the thing is it's the Unforgiven storyline in a sense, but done with more, X-Men and Wolverine and all that stuff. And you just have to say that to me, and I'm already sold. I don't need to know more. Like I'm already there.
There is something about, and maybe it's just us being who we are. There's something about you say, here is a plot of an old Western, but in like superheroes or fighting game characters or whatever, like it's something kind of like you say like, oh, it's basically it's Unforgiven but X-Men. It's there's another one I was thinking of, but like it's Magnificent Seven, but this or that. It's one of those things where there's just something about that just kind of like just jumps out to me. So Unforgiven. It's not even really X-Men. It's more of like, it's basically almost kind of Unforgiven of the Marvel universe. But like, yeah, sure, it's focused on Wolverine, but it's more of kind of like the Marvel universe as a whole. At that point, dark or alternate history. And I think one of the reasons why people don't like it now, or some people don't like it, is because of the character assassination it does to the Hulk. But my thing is, it's a parallel book. So the Hulk can be a hillbilly, like cousin fucker in this alternate version. I don't believe Superman would really work for Reagan in the mainstream comics, and Dark Knight Returns is considered one of the greatest books of all time. So, regardless, and Hulk's one of my favorite Marvel characters. So if I'm willing to look past that for the sake of this book, for the sake of everything, because it's just this really fun. It's a fun book. It's a sad book. It's also a really great character study. The idea that he doesn't unsheath his claws till the very end, and it kind of builds up. And it doesn't, initially when you first say he doesn't unsheath his claws till the end, that makes you think like, oh, come on, dude, come on. But they're like, no, it's worth it. It's worth it. When he goes just like Jason Voorhees on an entire like camp of Hulk people and like just goes to fucking town, just for the closer. And then we even get like a lot of the tragedy of what happened to the X-Men, him riding with old man Hawkeye, who's now blind, and just seeing what's become of the Marvel universe. It's just a really fun book. As dark and depressing as it is really fun. Ember, it hit me like a ton of bricks when I first opened this book up. Like a lot of these books on my list, maybe there's another book that could have gone in its place, but a lot of these books are books that basically, when I opened it up, it hit me a certain way, and I still feel that when I read it. And that's why this book is on here.
No, that is a good one, and that's one of those ones I've been really wanting to reread that again because I actually haven't read it since one's been probably about 15 years, but I have it sitting here, and it's definitely been. I'm like, okay, I gotta pull this one out again because it's a great storyline once again. And then there's other things that have kind of, you know, aped that as time has gone on, that storyline, which a lot of times I always bring it back to. It's Unforgiven, then Old Man Logan. But I was even watching through those Mortal Kombat Animated movies again, and the third one has that Old Man Logan style story, or Unforgiven, where instead it's Sub-Zero has given up, you know, his powers in a sense because he had one, you know, accident at one point that kind of screwed a whole lot of people over. So he hasn't done anything but went out and went farming for the last, 24, 30 years and let fucking Kano run the world. Because of that, old Kano, and then of course, finally once he decides that he's gonna, put the Sub-Zero costume back on and he's gonna summon fucking Scorpion, and they're gonna go fucking wreak havoc on Kano. It has that kind of vibe to it too. So it's like one of those stories that even if I see it multiple times and other stuff, it doesn't bother me because it is a really good take. I know that they've kind of, Marvel's kind of aped, or they've kind of used their Old Man Logan multiple times where there's, continual sequel books and so on. I think to me, nothing, I'm not saying anything against any of those because I never really sat down and read those other ones, but just that.
They're good, but they're not this.
Yeah, it's that original graphic novel. I'm totally like, if that's all it needs to be, that one's just a great, and I look at it like it's an Elseworld story. I don't try to, make it feel like, oh, how's this tie into X-Men and the rest of the Marvel universe,
What they did with that is, I guess there's a period where Wolverine died for good, apparently, in 616. And then to fill that hole, Old Man Logan came through the portal, ended up in 616, and he was now the Wolverine for that team for time being until he came back to the OG Wolverine came back to life or whatever happened.
Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of, as I said, it's interesting. You know what I mean?
It was a good series. I didn't read the X-Men stuff that he was in, but I read the Old Man Logan stuff, and it was usually something from his past coming back to fuck with him that followed him here, or something paralleling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. As I say, it still sounds cool and so on like that. But the Old Man Logan book, that is one of those fantastic, must reads. That is a great story, and yeah, definitely worth going back to as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
What was that? Your number 6?
That was my 6.
So, okay. My number 6, I'm going to go with what might seem like maybe close to the biggest book on my list. Well, I don't know. I'm looking at my number 5 here. But this is one of those ones, one of the probably first 5 graphic novels I ever kind of read beyond just, your single issues that you had as a kid and so on like that. But I think it's a book that really is almost a great gateway comic, if anything like that. And I'm going to say Batman Hush.
That was my first Batman comic, actually.
It really is one of those ones, like, if you want to lead somebody into comics quite right, it's like, here's a story. The only downfall is the artwork's almost so good that I feel like they might look at other books and have a harder time getting into them because Jim Lee is just killing it on this one here, But I think it's one of those ones, it's like, it captures a lot of the Batman core. It's got it's almost familiar enough that if you've only really seen the movies, you can kind of get into it. Because there's some of those other Batman books, if you try to hand them off to somebody, it's like, it almost is almost too foreign. It's like, well, I know who Batman is there, but who the hell is everybody else here? You know what I mean? And they expect me to already know their backstories and so on. Where Hush is kind of like, no, it's kind of this contained story and so on. You got a brand new villain, Hush, thrown in there. So, but you learn his whole origin and so on like that. Even if it is, you kind of see it coming a little bit, but beyond that, he's a cool character. He has got a great look and that there. But then you get a lot of the core heavy hitters, of Catwoman and Joker and all that kind of stuff in this book too. That somebody once again coming in fresh faced can kind of recognize it and so on like that, and doesn't have to do a whole lot of research too. But it's Jeff Loeb and I just dropped
Jim Lee.
Jim Lee. So I would blame it on the time, but it's only like noon 30, so I don't know what to tell you. But those two guys together is almost like, can you really think of too much of a stronger team than that for the most part? It's just, I feel like these guys knock it out of the park. The book is great. Every single page is practically one that, like, if you pulled it out and expanded it, you could throw it on your wall and be like, here's an art piece. It doesn't matter what, blindly pick a page. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be Batman sitting there talking, and like, it would still be an amazing shot.
I did not put this on my list just because I didn't want it to be just completely just like like Marvel and DC only, and like just here's two other books that aren't Marvel and DC or whatever, you know. And
8 out of 10 are Batman books, and then 2 other ones. Well, they still feature Batman. You know, it was a Justice League book that, let's be honest, used to call Batman League.
Yeah, it was 8 out of 10 are Batman books, and then like number 8 is a Superman / Batman book, and then the last one's
Kingdom Come.
Yeah, Kingdom Come. Yeah, no, I just didn't want to. This I think I could have logicked myself into getting this on my list because this was my first Batman comic, and Jim Lee's artwork is amazing. I do see like, it's not that there's another book that's coming on my list later has a bigger plot hole than Hush does. Hush is not really a plot hole. Hush is just a little obvious, but then they even throw you the red herring by thinking they killed off Hush. Like, oh, it was Clayface. Well, it was Hush from the get go. Like, oh, okay, but or Tommy Elliott. But the thing with this book is it is like a perfect jumping on point because all I knew of Batman at the time was what the cartoons were, what the movies were, and then I read this book, and this is the book that ultimately got me into Batman comics. You know, so like the book that ultimately got me into comics, really. So yeah, I it's not on my list, but I'm glad you have it on yours.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing for me. It's like this. I look at this book, and I think that's why, like, because realistically, I'll say this: over time, there's definitely probably Batman books that I actually would say are a little bit more dialed in and everything like that. But just the combination of all things coming together, it literally is the same one too. Because I feel like this is that time period where like you got right into comics, and then we started doing this like trade-off back and forth, and that got me kind of back into comics, you know, other than having, I would just say, you know, throughout life I always had just the random single issues that, like, you know, that's all you could afford as a kid, or you just get one X-Men, you know, issue and you're like, it's part 3 out of a 7-part series. Well, I gotta have to make up the rest of it from here. This is all I got, you know. So you would have those ones, but right here, as I feel like I look at this too, is this is kind of like the start. There's just like a handful of books that start coming into play, you know, and yeah, Batman Hush, I felt like got me into becoming like a huge Batman fan beyond just, you know, the animated show and of course the movies and the Adam West stuff. From here, it's like, yeah, each Batman book from this point on just adds to the whole mythos and so on. But Hush is just so good, and as I said, it's a good like gateway Batman book, gateway just comic books in general, you know. Even just it's got cool story stuff too, like, you know, with the fact that you have Red Hood and everything in here and so on like that like somebody might be like, well, I know who Robin is, and then you see that stuff, you're like, oh shit, what the fuck is this stuff, you know, kind of add in here, but enough to catch you up, not so much so that like you're lost, you know. Not like if you pass somebody like, here's what's the one where the fucking Gotham City pretty much goes into ruin, No Man's Land. You pass that to somebody, they'd be like,
names.
They'd be like, what the hell just happened here? like I got so much I need to catch up on.
Or you get like War Games, and there's like this whole like Bat Task Force on the side here. Like, here's Oracle and Tarantula, and like, wait, what the fuck is going? What's going? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, those ones need to come a little bit
not
later,
Oracle,
but
Morpheus. Morpheus.
Yeah.
There's a character, not Orpheus or something like that. It was a dude with like a helmet. It was Orpheus or not Morpheus, or it was a dude with like a helmet that came down like this or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of them there, but yeah, that's my number 6. So we're going up the chain. Where are we at? Number 5.
My number 5. We're just keeping it to Batman for a minute. My number 5 is Batman Endgame by Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo. The reason why I chose Endgame rather than Court of Owls or Death of the Family, Court of Owls is really good. Death of the Family is really good, and I generally like their whole run. There's maybe like an issue or two, or like 0 Year is probably the weaker part, I think, of their run, but 0 Year is still a good story. Endgame is just because it feels like right there, that's them going all out. Like Scott Snyder said, I can't end Batman. They're not going to let me end Batman. They're never going to let me end Batman. They're never going to end Batman. But if I could end Batman, this is how I'm going to end it. I'm going to write it. This is going to end it. And yeah, he's going to be back in the next volume because that's just comics. I'm not going to hide the lead. But if I could end it, this is how I would do it. And it is a very personal story between Batman and the Joker. And the idea of it, once again, plays with Joker's mythology. It doesn't give a complete answer, but plays with the idea that Joker is like, because he's always his origin was never really 100%, but it plays this idea that he is basically the demon of Gotham City, and he was always someone in the shadows, just basically had some version of Lazarus, and was always causing havoc in the city one way or the other. But it wasn't until someone started becoming more flashy and louder till he's like, well, I got to be flashy and loud too now. So, and just that idea, like, and I also got to do the polar opposite. He's trying to be all grimdark. I'll be funny about it, you know? So the idea of like, it is ballsy at this late in the game, trying to like redo the origin of the Joker, especially when you're like, this is supposed to be my final Batman story, essentially. Well, in my heart, the final Batman story. But even as personal as it is, it still feels like epic. It's like it's a horror story first and foremost, almost. And then secondly, just it's a big epic action story. I mean, the opening issue, it's not him going against like a bunch of different like villains to let you know the stakes. It's the Justice League. The Justice League got Jokerized, and he already has a contingency plan on how to take down like earlier we were talking about Pokemon, of like how like, you know, how much level they go into detail on like how a red or blue wins the matches. The way Batman coordinates his plan to bring down the Justice League, and it just doesn't feel like smart, you know, just like make shit up, and he just like the way how he systematically tries to like, okay, this is going to distract Flash at this time. I'm going to use this to go after after Superman. That's not going to be strong enough to end him. Just strong enough for me to withstand this until I do X, Y, and Z. You know, so it's just how much thought went into all this. You know, and that's just the first issue. You say the first issue. What's the first issue of this series of this arc? He fights the entire Justice League and barely wins. Barely wins. And they're not at their top game because they're Jokerized. But at the same time, like the rest of the story, it's just really good, very personal. And I just the idea of like when Joker, is it issue 3? Is it Death of the Family, or is it this one where Joker talks to Jim Gordon and tells him like, I sometimes sleep under your bed just because I can. You know, like,
yeah, I remember that part. I'm not too sure exactly where that did, but yeah, just like creepy, just slides out.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's issue 3. I don't think it's this one. I think it's issue 3, or it actually might be. No, it is this one. Yeah, he just spiders underneath the bed. That's a callback. He says he sometimes sleeps under his bed in volume 3. In this one, we actually see him crawling out from underneath the bed. Yeah. So it's just like literally like it's a horror story first, a big superhero epic second.
Mm-hmm. No, that one, that is like a really good end to an already amazing series. Like, in a sense, like if I had to think of like what's the best, like almost like total run of Batman, like that Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo run is so good. Just what is it, 10 volumes in a sense for the most part?
Yeah, it goes on for another like 3 volumes after this, I think. But it's basically because there's 2 volumes of where Jim Gordon is Batman, and then Batman, the Batman coming in at the end, and then like one more story or 2 of Batman, and then it's like volume 10. I want to say it's packed with just a bunch of like annuals and special type shit. You know what I mean? There's like 1 or 2 like Snyder and Capullo issues in there, and the rest of it is like backstories or whatever, which is fine, but it was things fitting around that time.
Okay, that's sort of like what it was. I know there's some of that, but yeah, no, that whole run, just everything about it, super good. The artwork's fantastic. Greg Capullo always just kills it on that. And no, it is like a fitting. If you were gonna have an end, like this is one of those definitive ones. It kind of fits in like, you know, I guess you would say a similar place as in the Alan Moore Batman one. Why am I trying to blank on that? But
Killing Joke,
you know, and so on like that too. You know, there is just those certain points, or even you could say Dark Knight Returns as well. It fits in that kind of like these great like almost like, you know, bookend pieces to classic lineage of stories.
And of course, he and Joker survive. They find a plot. They find a loophole at the end. Not at the end of this, but the end of like next issue. It's teased that Bruce Wayne's still alive. I mean, and Snyder was even like, of course he's alive. We weren't gonna like, yeah, we know what we're doing. We know what this is. We're not gonna bullshit you like we're killing Batman again, you know?
Yeah.
So at least he was honest about it and just like, this is just how I would like to end it if I could. And even that, like when he brings down the Joker, like he out crazies the Joker. When Batman out crazies the Joker and Joker is finally kind of like freaking the fuck out when Batman scares the Joker, I always like those moments.
Yeah, no, I think that's cool too, you know. So yeah, no, there's a lot of great stuff in that one there. That's another run of books I would love to pick up and go all the way through from the very beginning, Court of Owls, and read that whole run once again because it's been a moment. But yeah, I'm glad you have that on your list actually.
Yeah, this one is fantastic. And then, even just one more thing, and then we'll be on the next one. To help him fight off a bunch of Jokerized zombie people, he hires like he enlists the help of a bunch of his own villains to like team up with. Like, so the Bat family is teaming up with like Bane and Penguin and Clayface and other characters to fight off all these Jokerized zombie people. That's
right. I forgot about that part too. Yeah, so no, there's so much cool stuff in there. I definitely got to open that one up again. It's just been too long. Well, going up our list, this is actually going to probably be the biggest book that I have, I know, at least on my list or something like that. But it's one of those ones that I've literally reread probably 5 or 6 times ever since that, initial time period, the same time period around Batman Hush. This probably was when, like, maybe the first 10 major graphic novels I kind of ever read. And I know it's kind of like the definitive big one, but it's just such a good story that, like, I always can enjoy it no matter what. And that's Watchmen, I felt like it's just got to be on there. I always love it every single time I go through it. The artwork's fantastic, and I even I love that. Speaking of even movie wise, the Zack Snyder, the the third cut of it or whatever that has everything. It has the Black Freighter and everything in there. I think that's almost one of the best adaptations out of any book ever. I mean, I know the ending's a little bit different, but I actually kind of like that ending just a fraction bit more. That might be a little blasphemy to say, but where it's we're using Dr. Manhattan's powers instead to create a bomb and then blaming it on him, and he's like, well, fuck you guys, I'm out of here. See ya. Space.
I would like the idea of anytime he had to just like teleport to space, he used to say it like that, like space, like he just gets commercially cut off by the zap.
And as he teleports, he disappears really fast, but for some reason the wiener takes a couple seconds to like follow through.
Just dangles there for
he
a second.
Flops out and then like shoots out. Slaps a guy in the face real quick. Ow!
Like a little boomerang. Just like
It's one of those ones, like, in the comic book, it's okay if you want to have some kind of interdimensional space or, like, monster thing that's weird and fucking almost like something out of Resident Evil. Like, that's fine, too. But I think, I don't know, in the movie version, I think it makes it like, oh, yeah, just blame it on fucking Dr. Manhattan. You know what I mean? I guess that makes sense. He's like an atom bomb that walks around, But, whatever, I still think both of them are like together. Just that story itself, just all the characters, and it's one of those ones where like I really love the living daylights out of so many of these characters, and I like them all for different ways. Like I love Rorschach. I love the fact that like here's this dude out there trying to fight crime on his own, but he's poor as fuck. He eats beans out of other people's fridges and so on like that, but he's always on the case. The comedian is I think the funniest fucking character alive. Like it's that one they designed him to like be like he's called the comedian, but it's supposed to be like he's doing some really shitty stuff. I'm like, yeah, but that's what makes it funny. The fact that he's just such a bad guy and he does it like I'm laughing because of it, Even Night Owl, who's kind of the bitch character, I still like him a lot though, even though he might have this like, nobody's listening to me. Yeah, I got some cool technology, guys.
He's the most well-meaning character.
Yeah, he's the most well-meaning character, and he's a great guy. And even though I know it's like everyone's like, he tries to say something like, "Hold on a second, there, Night Owl. Let the men talk first." Too
much estrogen flowing from your lips.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? Shit. We got Lori here, but realistically, let's be honest. She's more of a man than you are. Let's be honest.
Like, oh yeah, no, I get it. Yeah,
no, you're right. I'm not gonna deny that. And then Ozymandias, I fuck that guy's one of my. He might almost be my favorite character in the thing. I don't know, like everything about it. I just think there's so much cool, just diverse stuff going on with each one of these ones, and you can deep dive into this any which way you want and so on like that. And just even once again, it's one of those books that like, we've just kind of grown up in that era where there was still that like stigma of like, oh, comic books are for fucking kids. I feel like the last 15 years or so, I'm not saying somebody doesn't say that anymore. It's kind of gone away a little bit,
Yeah.
But when we were, even in the 2000s, it still was that kind of time period. This is when you slap fucking Watchmen down. You go, you fucking tell me comic books are for kids. Like, look at this fucking story here. It will outbeat generally any novel you think you can pick up.
Smack it across their face like Dr. Manhattan slaps his cock across someone's face and he teleports.
I think they should have made the book in cock form, where it's just a giant blue cock, so that you could literally pick it up and slap people with the book and be like, read this shit.
or it's like a pop-up book. That's the only thing that pops up out of it, though.
You open it like it hits you in the eye, like, ah! They're like, we had to recall those books. People kept getting like paper cuts on their eye.
Yeah. One guy even lost an eyelid. Like, oh shit.
It's a sharp cock. Well, then next we thought to make it, thicker and stuff like that, but then it just knocked people out. It hit him right in the jaw like a fucking punch from like Dolph Lundgren.
One guy actually died. He hit the back of his head on the table. So,
Yeah.
lawsuit coming in.
Yeah, he slipped on a copy of like The Dark Knight Returns and fell backwards. It was like a double whammy.
Either way, it was even a Batman-shaped table. So I think no matter what, we're kind of fucked.
Yeah, he was almost too big of a DC fan, and like it's not working out in our favor. But but no, like Watchmen itself, yeah, it's like one of those books that like books/movies and so on that once again, I feel like a lot of people, of course, if you're really into comics, of course, you really know about it. There still is a lot of people out there though that you can still pass this thing to, that this might be kind of their first time into books, even the movie itself, and be like, hey, check this shit out, But I like that it goes through kind of the real world of like everywhere from like literally like the 30s of like, hey, we just had like if superheroes were kind of around back in those days and whatnot like this, and this is how they were in the literally the Bronze Age and Silver Age, and then it moves on up to like the 70s and 80s, and somehow some way Richard Nixon just finds a way to become president forever. And so when we got to deal with this because he won Vietnam because he actually happened to have Dr. Manhattan at the time period, and it's just got all these kind of, it's one of those weird ones that like, if this was like just a regular DC story and they try to tie all this stuff together, I'd be like, I like my comic books to be sort of separated from real world stuff, but since it's its own thing, I think that's what's kind of cool. And I know that nowadays they've kind of worked Watchmen into the DC universe, which I think, not saying there can't be
a special event. It was just like a crossover event thing for like rebooting shit, and then they just rebooted things again like 4 or 5 months later.
Yeah, so I'm not saying they can't be like interesting for some Elseworld stories and so on, but I was like, okay, well, I kind of like Watchmen as is, and I even like those before Watchmen books. Like I know people kind of looked at those as like, what the hell is this shit, But like, I thought it was kind of cool. They literally got a bunch of people who are already talented writers and artists and so on like that, and they just made a before Watchmen series, and I felt like that added a lot of extra depth and detail throughout the stories and so on.
I still need to read it because I actually have Doomsday Clock, which is the DC. Watchmen, like your best friends meet, or I don't know, but like
I got that one too, and I haven't opened that one up sadly yet either.
I was reading it as it was coming out, then I just fell behind, and I actually just bought the volume later, and I gotta jump on it. But I know that it's revealed that one of the reasons in this, and granted it's something else happens later, but in this, it's revealed that like the reason why reboots keep happening or there's so many inconsistencies within DC's lore is it's Dr. Manhattan restarting things over and over. When he says he goes off
by and he keeps hitting buttons.
Yeah, exactly.
Shit, that happened again. God damn it.
Well, no, it's exactly. Like I meant to just come in and just grab a glass of water, but I turned him into like. I turned like Clark Kent to 1940s version. My bad. I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, no. He basically kept on like.
It's got a mind of its own.
Yeah, I can't help it. Yeah, I know I'm a god, but even I have my limits. Yeah, no. Because at the end he's just like, I'm going to go create life or create a world somewhere else, and then basically I think it's like either he's tampering with the DC universe or he created the DC universe, and he's basically, it's in this loop of being constantly repaired and rebooted because of actions. At least a lot of the inconsistencies of things. How suddenly it's in the 40s and then it's in the 50s, and then how each of that kind of shit.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. I was gonna say I have that literally. I have the hardcover book of it sitting here. I just never got around to that one. I read all the before Watchmen ones, which that's like, you know, if you add them all up, it's probably like 800 pages worth of stuff. But they're all pretty neat. And then but yeah, as I said, Watchmen is one of those ones. I know that that's probably like the biggest book, but I felt like it had to be on the list at least at some point because I've probably read it almost more. There's probably not too many other books I've read more than that. Like maybe. Yeah, like a couple Batman ones I can think of, but that book I've at least read about 5 or 6 times, 7 times maybe even, you know, and then combined with watching the movie too.
I love it, but it didn't make my list just because I haven't read it enough. I've read it like twice, but at the same time, it is one of the most important books out there.
But going up the list, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is a book by Jeff Smith called Razzle. I got the whole series in this omnibus right here.
Yes, I am so glad you put that on there because that was actually it was literally I was trying to find a place for that one, and that now is your omnibus one? Is yours in color or black and white?
It's in color.
Okay, because I got the omnibus that's like I found the one, it's called the original version or whatever, or it has a title like that, but it's all in black and white because I wanted like the initial version. Because
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say because like I remember because the original because you used to have just like the small graphic novels of that one and it was in black and white, and then when I was looking for it again, I kept seeing the colorized version. I'm like, well, I want the original version. I don't want the redone colored one. And then I found an omnibus that was kind of. Yeah, I think it even says like not for like retail sale or something on it or something like that. Something kind of cool, but it's like it's all in black and white.
Yeah, so I actually I had volume because I couldn't find it. It was for some reason for the life of me could not find volume 2 and 3. It was just this weird little book I came across. I liked volume 1, read it, loved it, and couldn't find volume 2 or 3 or whatever. And then I just came across this omnibus and like, I'll take it. I'm like, oh shit, it's in color. But then I'm like, well, even though it looks cool in color, it still looks good in color. I do prefer black and white. I think it just helps this story more. It helps the noir tone of the story. But for people who don't know, Razzle is a story about a guy who used to be a physics professor who came across, him and his best friend, came across the missing notebook of Nikola Tesla. And using that, they basically discovered interdimensional travel. And his life has gone to shit. And using what he knows, he's basically created this device where he is an art thief. He's going from different directions, from different dimensions, and stealing just like art for different buyers. Just art, and has this cold kind of almost this Parker kind of like tone to it, like this old timey like 50s noir vibe to it. And someone is starting to get on his trail, and someone is starting to like catch up with him, this weird ugly lizard face guy. There's also aspects of like horror in this, like psychological horror, and it's you know, he's haunted by his past, and it's a little complicated going back and forth, so I'm not going to bother doing that. And it has this whole kind of like southwest kind of south of the border kind of vibe to it too, like a lot of the settings, a lot of the locales they go to. So I don't know, I just remember reading this book and being so like obsessed with it when I first read it, and then maybe 4 years go by and I finally come across the omnibus and just bought that motherfucker and finally finished with the story, finished the end of the story. And yeah, I love this series. I do wish I had the black and white version because I just think even though the color looks great, and they did a great job with it, I just think the black and white helps the tone more. But it is fantastic, and yeah, I love the art style to it.
Yeah, no. That's one of those ones. It's literally I have that on my list, but I just didn't know exactly where to place it at and so on like that. And I actually was going to do the thing. I'm like, if we have any double ones, I was going to throw that in there and just replace it with Razzle. Like 100%, I had that. But I'm glad you brought that up because that book is so good. I love the artwork in it. The story's amazing. And then Jeff Smith's the dude who did Bone, if anybody's wondering who that guy was. And
I haven't read Bone. Everyone says Bone's really good, but I never read Bone.
It's good, but I think Razzle's definitely, like, to me, his like pinnacle story of all that stuff. I got like one or two of those like Bone books or something. I know there's like a crap ton of them, but no, that's the characters are cool. He's got like his, he's got his girlfriend in there and so on like that, and he goes for these different dimensions and time travel and so on, and just throwing in kind of like the real world science stuff in there with a little science fantasy. Yeah, there's just so much going on there, and I feel like it's a story kind of unlike anything else I've ever really read.
The sci-fi with the noir pulp vibe to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's one of those ones, and yeah, that book's a huge book. It's probably another 600-page one, and it's amazing from beginning to end and so on like that. And it's not the easiest one to come across nowadays. I know that, you almost have to kind of definitely like almost buy it off eBay anymore or something like that. You probably can buy it on Amazon, but yeah.
I couldn't find it when I was like, I recommended it to a friend of ours, and then I said, yeah, well, mine only has this medieval. Like, I had like, I guess, like, I'm not sure what I was. The first one I had, I don't know what it was exactly, but it was it started at the beginning, it ended like before but my friend had another volume that was just started it, like, I can't explain it. Like, it was like two issues in one. Mine was like 4 issues in one, some shit like that. I don't know. It was just very like, where's just the regular volume 2? Where the fuck is this thing? But yeah.
Yeah.
Glad I finally got this one though. So yeah.
No, that's one of those ones that's like I definitely feel like, especially for like those ones, is like I love the artwork so much, and that like that's one of those ones where I hold that one up, and like if I had like a top 5 list of the books that kind of like inspire me to like draw, like that one's like way high on there.
Oh yeah, this book inspired. I mean, the characters coming in a different way, but this book inspired me to make that comic I made like, Jesus, like 15 years ago. Grit, the art style. It's not as good as this, of course, but the tone and vibe, Razzle inspired.
Yeah, cool. Well, if that's your number 4, I'll go into my number 4, another black and white book. And once again, this is not a manga series one I have on here, so it's kind of hard to like pinpoint it to like one book. I just feel like you kind of take it as a whole. But at least this is one of those ones that's like it's a complete series in a sense, or it's done now. And this is probably the newest story I have on my list, and this is one that I've been reading in like the last couple of years as it's been coming out. Like I literally would buy each volume every time they came out, and I love the living daylights out of it. But it's called Candy and Cigarettes. And what this one is it's a story of like this old like 70-year-old man who he's retired, but then his grandson literally gets some kind of rare weird disease, and in order to pay the medical bills and so on like that, he has to kind of go get a job. He's like, no, I'm going to save the kid. I love this kid. I mean, I don't mind. I'll go back to work. And so he goes. I think he was like. He was almost like a glorified like security guard, like high end, for like the government type thing. So he goes back as a cleaner for this assassin company, and he's just taking all these kind of shitty jobs, but they pay well. But the whole point about it is just the fact that he can pay for his grandson's, health issues. And then the other character that joins along with him is there's this like 11-year-old girl who's like pretty much just like a hit girl type thing, assassin who. She takes everybody out, kills all the people, and then the old dude has to come in and clean up about it and so on. But as time goes on, they become, almost like, like a parental figure, like where he's like, oh, I'll make sure you're doing the right thing there, young lady, and so on like that, and they get themselves into, all kinds of situations where shit gets extreme, and they get thrown into even a war environment in like the Middle East for like a midsection of like the story arc and so on there, to the fact that they even then it's got some of those elements too where they end up in, the U.S. and so on like that. And I always think it's always interesting when you get those like stories where, because this is one of those weird ones where it's a Japanese story, but like it's got a lot of American influence kind of stuff in it. And I think that makes for kind of a cool, style. Almost like another book that would borderline almost make it on my list is the Gunsmith Cats, which we talked about the anime not too long ago. I love that combo of like Japanese kind of like writing like, almost like 80s action style American movies. And Candy and Cigarettes kind of fits in a similar vibe like that. Where it's one of those ones too, like I think it ran 14 books or something like that. And for the most part, I never felt like I got kind of burnt on it. Like where I think of a lot of manga series, I'll say like they're great for like the first like 3 to 5 books. And then you can kind of tell the guy's like, I got to punch in a card. Like they're not bad, but here's the thing: we're gonna fight for the next 3 arcs. I don't fucking know. I'm just gonna draw punching left and right, and guess what? The book's done. I get a paycheck. They let me sleep for 2 days. Whatever. Because it happens with so many of them. Like the best of the best stories, you see that point where they go like they're almost like their ideas totally run out, and they're like, how can we drag this on now, but still sell volumes? This one felt like it ran pretty darn good. There might be a couple of those like where maybe not as good as others, but like I still love the living daylights out of this. And this just the characters are cool, just the world and the environment. I know it sounds kind of like there's a lot of those kind of Japanese assassination club kind of books out there, but this one just kind of felt different. I just had the old man person. I don't know what it is. Like when I see like there's like an old man guy, and I feel like I can relate to this guy, Old Man Orange. Here's my relatable character. This the old guy who bitches about everything. But still gets the job done, good action and everything like that. But I know it's one of the newest ones on there, but it's something that like in like the last 5 years or so, probably the comic book that stood out to me the most.
Yeah. I never read it. It sounds interesting though. Sounds kind of like Gunsmith Cats, a little bit of like John Wick, kind of to an extent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got a little bit of that. I guess another modern series you would I think this is actually how I found out about it, because Amazon kind of recommended one to the other, was Sakamoto Days. I almost want to say Sakamoto Days kind of got me recommended this book. And don't get me wrong, I like Sakamoto Days, but that one did kind of run its course, after about 3 or 4 books, even though I still kind of read them. But this one, I like so much more than that, It's just, I felt like it had, there's just deeper stuff going on. I liked all the characters and so on like that. I really, it's one of those ones I'd love just to sit down and really just reread through it again. And it's only been, like, I only finished the final book was only like 3 or 4 months ago, at least for the U.S. release. Wow. I think the books are like a couple years, I think they're like a couple years behind from Japan, but,
okay.
Because it's not like a major company. It's not like Viz or anything like that that's putting this together. It's that one that has, I think it's called 7 Seas. And they do a lot of, that company does a cool job of bringing a lot of like 70s and like 60s comic books that like I have like a Loop on the Third one that they put out. They have one like, what the fuck's that? Devil Man and so on like that from like the 70s and whatnot. There's a lot of cool ones they've done there of old school stuff, Super Sentai books and so on. But yeah, no, Candy and Cigarettes. Yeah, if you kind of gritty crime, manga style, I guess. Old man and there's like the old man, the young girl kind of dynamic where it's just like he almost becomes this glorified grandfather figure to her. But like, they go out and they fucking kill people and take care of business and so on, no problem. Get paid, call it a day.
Well, I have to check that one out.
Yeah, it's
Candy
well
and
worth
Cigarettes.
It. Yeah, Candy and Cigarettes is kind of a weird way. I feel like it sounds strange. Like calling a book, putting the cigarettes in your title nowadays sounds like you're gonna get screwed over because like that the algorithm's gonna like knock you off because of that. I kind of wonder that the whole time.
Japan's probably doesn't give a shit so much.
Well, Japan probably doesn't, but when they try to sell the books in America,
over here,
because it's literally got the words candy and cigarettes in it. It's just that almost sounds like what you would see like on the side of a white van driving by an elementary school.
Hey, you kids want some manga?
Yeah. You like the manga, kids? Yeah. We used to give out candy. Now we just give out fucking Japanese manga and anime. The kids come running in. They don't even question anymore.
I got Demon Slayer. I got the My Hero Academia. I got the Jujutsu Kaisen, whatever the fuck that thing's called. Right over here, kids. Yeah.
Yeah, human trafficking's been up ever since.
Thank you, Japan.
Yeah, thank you, Japan. Yeah, you know. So it's like that line that there's like that one. It's like the old episode of South Park where like I think it's when Barbara Streisand's trying to get the kids in the van and whatnot. And then like I think Kyle looks. I'm like, aren't we supposed to not get in vans with people and stuff? And Cartman's all, no, there's candy involved.
Yes.
But yeah, so going up the list, what's your number 3 there?
My number 3, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale's Spider-Man Blue.
Ooh, that's a good one right there.
It is. I guess a lot of times when I think Spider-Man, I think like Ultimate Spider-Man or Michael Straczynski's or something like Spider-Man Blue, I guess. And because Ultimate Spider-Man, it was too much for me to like. I was flipping through them, just like which, because I was thinking like particularly, not to put you on the spot, but I was like, graphic novel, not run, graphic novel. So I was just, but I guess at the same time you could say, oh, maybe there's an omnibus of this somewhere, maybe, but let me count that. But I was just like, I didn't want to. I was like looking through my different Ultimate Spider-Mans. I was like, it's hard to pick, and then I was thinking this, and this kind of like gives all the kind of like fun 60s pop art vibe of Spider-Man of that time, but at the same time, modernized writing, great character development, the comedy in it. It's not like gut busting or knee slapping, but it's like upbeat and funny. It's a very emotional book, you know, because it's about Spider-Man like meeting Gwen Stacy for the first time and him reflecting back on that, and or the relationship picking up at that time, and then blue being kind of like sort of being a frequent color popping up throughout a lot of the book, and just the artwork is just Tim Sale is one of my favorite artists. So him for anytime he puts down like anytime he put his, unfortunately he passed, but anytime he put down like artwork somewhere, I really want to check that book out right there. And seeing this, like, oh my god, it's like Spider-Man and it's Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, and the artwork looks amazing. And yeah, the story is very simple. It's basically just kind of like, here's a couple of times where, very lighthearted too, here's a couple of times where Peter was trying to like win over Gwen Stacy, but Spider-Man stuff popped up and kept on getting in the way. And it's in the 60s because that's that whole period of early in his career, and everything has kind of like this 60s modern kind of look to, like not updated, like it still looks like it takes place in the 60s, but like contemporary sensibilities as far as like how comics are made today. And artwork looks just fantastic. We get a good sense of just the character dynamic between, you know, Peter, Mary Jane, Gwen, and even Flash. So did I say Harry in there?
No, but yeah, Harry's in it.
Harry, yeah. So, you know, it's just plus, you know, you get a lot of like villains in this. So it's just a fantastic book. It's just a book that just makes me happy every time I flip through it, every time I read it. You know, has most of his big villains that would have been out in by the 60s at that point. So yeah, if you haven't read Spider-Man Blue, I really recommend it. It's not really a super complicated book. It's not a book that's that deep, but it's just a book that just makes me really happy whenever I read it. So yeah.
No, that one's a really good one. I actually just read through that recently too, because I read through all like the Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale color books or whatever, like, because there was Spider-Man Blue, Hulk Gray, which is very good, Captain America White. Maybe you should have
gone with red. Maybe you should have gone with red on that one.
Yeah, because now that sounds like that's like for the people that bitched about the new Captain America movie. Like, I want Captain America White. It's like, oh Jesus Christ, no, the Tim Sale story. Jesus, what do you think I want? You know, and there's a fourth one. Oh, Daredevil Yellow. That's the other one.
Yeah, I almost put Daredevil Yellow on this list.
Yeah, well, and I'll say this. I think all four of those books are all excellent gateway ones, too. Like, if you kind of want to be like, hey, I've seen Spider-Man the movie, I watched the animated series and with that, Spider-Man Blue is a great one to jump on into and be like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I can kind of get behind this. It's not way complex or something like that. You know, Peter's not doing something, you know, interdimensional with, like, the Fantastic Four or something that you got to, like, have a lot of backstory to understand what's going on. No. It's like literally like just a good story, just like the Gwen Stacy stuff. It's a good way to learn about Gwen Stacy if you didn't know a whole lot about her. And yeah, it's a fun read. The artwork's amazing. As I said, if you compare them, or pair them with those other, you know, Marvel Comics, Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale color series and whatnot, you know, I guess at least they didn't do like Black Panther Black. Like, well, Black's already in his title. We'll put it in there again.
What else do you want us to do?
I'm reading BPB.
Maybe purple. I don't know. Sometimes he has like kind of a purple outline on that necklace. I don't know, but like,
yeah.
The only one of those books I don't have is Hulk Gray, and I'm kicking myself because there's a copy of it sitting in like my comic book store at the time Like, and I was like, I'll get to it. And then one day it slipped by me, or I moved away, or COVID or whatever. And then I looked it up, and that book goes for like, Hulk Gray is so expensive and so hard to come across now too.
Oh gosh, it's probably well, it's weird because it's like, I want to say it's literally on. I read it on a Kindle or whatever, and it was on Comixology Unlimited, so it was on there if you want to save a buck, just at least a read.
Yeah, no, I'm a dirty hoarder. I want to know a tree died. I want to know a family of like squirrels and birds lost their home, so I can put it on my shelf. You know, that's just how I am. But like, because I already have the other ones. I already have Daredevil, Captain America, Spider-Man. And I've read Gray. Gray's fantastic, but I don't own it though. So
yeah, no, they're all good. No, I'm glad you have that one on your list. I like that book a lot. And just being in like I've been just in a like for the feels like the last year I've just been in a good Spider-Man mood where I've just read all kinds of just random ass Spider-Man and Fantastic Four for some reason. Just read a lot of those, but was there a no? There wasn't a. I was trying to think. Was there a Fantastic Four colored one? You know, but no, I don't think so. I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe not. But going up the list, I guess I'm going to my number 3. I'm gonna go with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but the original run. I like the black and white versions, like the pure stuff from the '80s. The Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird ones. Those are those other ones too that I love kind of the raw feel of those old school ones. I love just the martial arts stuff in there. You know, when people used to talk about this before, when all we knew about was the cartoon show and the movies and so on like that, they'd make up be like, oh, dude, what was that?
My dog.
Oh,
she just came down the stairs.
Yeah, it just literally sounded like something fell down the stairs.
No, just a giant lump of fur just flopping down here. So yeah.
Well, those original Ninja Turtles ones, they used to always talk about them like, oh man, they're so dark, they're so gritty, you know what I mean? It's just like everybody's fucking serious in it and so on. And then you kind of go to read it and you go, actually, it's not really that much different than Ninja Turtles. It is more serious. It goes a little bit more like, you know, old school samurai and martial arts feeling, and that's what I kind of like about it. But it still captures a very, very similar vibe. And strangely enough, if I had to pick only one book, since you know, realistically, I'll say this: I know
the omnibus, which covers a whole series or run.
Yeah, for the most part, every single one of these books I said, even if I say like mention series, even like the manga ones or something like that, I would just say I can generally pick the first one, and that would be my goal one. Southern Bastards, I pick the first one. The Pokemon Red and Blue ones, whatever. Candy and Cigarettes, even the first one, just that'd be that. But T and the Ninja Turtles, though. That original run, like, it's actually kind of amazing how similar it is to the first movie and so on like that. The first movie actually follows that pretty darn accurately and so on, but you get more, since it's a comic book, of course, they go a little bit more in depth on some things and so on like that. And that book also takes off, like, right away. I mean, like, the first 3 issues is literally, like the movie, Shredder dies, and, like, Shredder doesn't even appear for a while. They literally start going on completely other random adventures and so on like that, and just deep diving into, like, Turtles lore that you would expect to be like, oh, you would assume that's from issue 24 or something like that. Like, no. Like, they just get rolling right off the bat. And I just think they're some of those books that are just amazing. I love the artwork in them, too. I think that the artwork stands out so much. I always get kind of excited. Every once in a while, you'll read a new Ninja Turtles one, and Kevin Eastman will do. He'll maybe only do like a little like couple page part in it, but I always just feel like I'm so excited when I see that. You know, it's like one of those ones. Like, even though there's other great artists out there, I'm like, I don't care. Like, if Kevin Eastman would just sit down and do the whole one, or him and Peter Laird, because they had a cool way that they went about it. Like, instead of just being like, you know, one guy draws, one guy inks or something like that. No, they actually both drew and inked together, and they just passed the pages back and forth, like almost like. It reminds me almost, it's like a fucking Pacific Rim where you had to have 2 people to like synchronize to make the robot work. Like, that's almost how these comic books work. You had to have 2 of them together there, and then they synchronize, and then like they could like totally draw these issues out and so on. But you never hear of anybody else really doing work like that. But I think that's what sort of created something so special.
Yeah, I remember when we covered those like about a year ago or so. Mm-hmm. Like, they were just basically pure creative fuel. Just the idea of like, because there's that thing, you know, this thing would go on to create an empire, but then there's that also thing you're keeping in mind, like, this was just 2 guys in their apartment just jamming this shit out, making a comic inspired by like Frank Miller and Jack Kirby. You know, that's basically what it is. Like, we're taking like retro Jack Kirby inspiration, and then with like Frank Miller kind of like modern sensibilities, you know. And yeah, I mean, I remember when we covered it, I was like, okay, yeah, sure, check it out. I'm sure it'll be interesting. Like, it was really just inspiring. Just makes you want to create something after you read those. Like, not like more so than like any of the movies did. You know what I mean? Like movies are still fun. I still like the movies, but the comic is just something like, oh shit, yeah, this is something that is really special.
Yeah, and I think that's just what it is. And I think it's that thing that people take the comic book kind of for granted. Just be like, oh, whatever. We got a cartoon show. We got multiple ones. We got movies and so on like that. Well, why do I need to read the old comic? Isn't it in black and white? You know, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, sit down and look at it because it is like you watch this and you go, or you read this and you go, geez, this is very cool. This, like, the artwork's awesome. It's super unique. You know, just the great samurai type stories, just like that, you know, golden age of, I would say, almost like American kind of martial arts stuff. You know, Ninja Turtles is really the thing that creates that or brings that into full swing, I feel. And yeah, I just think the stories are awesome, and just seeing just like the origin, and actually, because in a sense, like, you know, like, don't get me wrong, I love the original 87 cartoon show. I'm very nostalgic for it and so on like that. But it's so toned down comparatively to how the comic book already was. Like, the comic book was almost like way ahead of the time and so on like that. And then that's where I think that 2000s cartoon actually captures that a lot better in a sense, realistically, because it still has the kind of whoa 90s feel of like the characters, you know, but then keeps more of like the darker martial arts feel to it and so on like that. But yeah, you know, and just, yeah, everybody's there. Casey, April, you know, all the characters you expect, but even things like, you know, the part where like Splinter literally, like, you know, like a hardcore scene where I think Splinter falls into this well and he breaks his like leg, and so he can't come out. He has to literally like let it heal beforehand. And this is like the kind of like the messed up part. He's in a well, so the only thing he can eat to survive is other rats. So he has to, in a sense, cannibalize and so on. And this is where the Rat King character, which is like in the cartoon show, is very comical and so on like that. And he's just kind of goofy, like mutant. That he envisions this because he's just like hallucinating from being down here waiting. So he visualizes this Rat King character tell him like, you must eat the soul of the rat in order to survive. It is the only way. And you know, this kind of deep stuff. And then eventually he heals his leg and he's able to climb back out of the fucking well and so on like that. And I just feel that's the stuff you just don't get enough in, like, you don't get that in the cartoon shows, you don't get that in the movies and so on, where, you know, it's there. And it's not
the
saying
cartoon is just a wacky character with a crown. Like, I'm the Rat King, dude.
Yeah, yeah, it's like a white guy too for some reason, if I'm not mistaken. See, one thing about the old cartoon kind of white guys a lot of like characters, and you go, it's like Baxter Stockman. You kind of read the comic, you're like, oh shit, he was black from the very beginning. Like, why would you change that? I mean, I know it's the '80s, but why? Like he's so much cooler as that kind of character, like as is, and so on, you know. But whatever, you know. Yeah, Ninja Turtles. Go out of the way to check that out. Don't. I think that's a kind of comic book that's like, don't bypass that just because you feel like you already know enough about the turtles. Like, when you see those books, they really do make a difference.
And we'll go on to the next one soon. But like, even just the whole thing of just the way certain things go. Like when they go to like the dinosaur asteroid like city or whatever, and they take the president hostage, but then like their plane goes to shit just because like one of the president's men accidentally shoots the president dinosaur, and just like, well, there's our fucking hostage. What the fuck do we do? You know? So just like that kind of like, it's kind of like there's not even enough time to make like a joke about it. Just like, fuck, you know, just like that kind of shit you don't think about, like, you know, like just like for just some reason that really stood out to me. You don't think about that when you think like Ninja Turtles, you know?
And the interesting thing too, I think that's like issue 5.
Yeah, like 5 or 6.
It's like, yeah, it's like they're literally like already past New York, and they're already on some fucking other planet taking a president hostage who's a dinosaur, you know, and that kind of stuff. Like that's I love how like zany it almost kind of gets right off the bat, and how fucking like, oh shit, we're getting real interesting here.
You think that's year like 2 or 3 of the book? Like, no, that's like month 5.
Yeah, but yeah, that's my number 3. So I guess going on the list, what's your number 2?
My number 2, I think this one was bound to show up sooner or later, but same team as my last selection. Long Halloween, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale.
Hey, you want to guess what my number 2 is?
We're doing a double here.
Yeah, this is double trouble, because that's what my number 2 is Batman Long Halloween.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things like, the first one I read was Hush, and then I had other books I got between here and there, and then like I came across this one, and I'm not gonna lie, now I could look at this, and this is like Yeah, that's a lot, but I can do that. That's not a big deal. At the time, I wasn't used to looking at a book this thick and being like, shit, man, that's going to be a fucking minute. I wasn't used to it at the time. So then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just, Dark Knight's coming out like in a few months. Let me just sit down and read this. I thought it was going to just be if I pick a few pages, because you flip through it, the artwork's beautiful. It's gorgeous, but Tim Sale. But it also, like, it's a cold, slow burn story. And it looks in the paper, the pictures show that. So I'm like, okay, this is probably something I'll read like an issue of like once a day or twice a day or something, and I'll get to it when I get to it. I read in the course of one afternoon.
Yeah.
And I was just addicted. I just sat down and I just cranked this thing out. And now that's a common thing I can do with a comic, but at the time it wasn't. At the time I would be like, ooh, like it would, I like, you know,
it's intimidating.
Yeah, this is like almost the length, not as thick as Watchmen, but almost as thick as Watchmen, you know.
There's technically 2 graphic novels in one, because if I'm not mistaken, it's 12 issues.
Yeah. So I just cranked this thing out and fell in love with it. At the time, I didn't notice the one glaring plot hole, which is there's 2 killers that are working independently of each other. But I'll be honest, I didn't really stop and think about it until someone else said that, like in a video essay about it. I'm like, well, I guess I can look into some aspect of like maybe one was going to go out there, but then they heard someone else killed him. Like, fuck, I can't do it tonight, whatever, you know. Or, you know, that is a little bit of a plot hole, but there is just something about like the rest of it, the character development, the story of like Harvey Dent's descent into becoming Two-Face, the artwork. Every other aspect of this thing fires on all cylinders. And even if there is that little bit of that plot hole, which it is a big plot hole, but even if there is that, I can't help but just like be happy every time I flip through this book and read it. And like, this is what kind of cemented Tim Sale as one of my favorite artists. So, I won't take up the whole thing here, but yeah, that's why it's my number 2.
Oh yeah, and that's the same reason why it's my number 2 as well, because I actually think this is the ultimate Batman, you know, intro piece, but just solid Batman story in general, because it has all the classic Batman villains in there, and it goes through a cool storyline where it's like this holiday killer thing. So it goes through an entire year in each one of the holidays and so on, starting with Halloween and then coming all the way back around to Halloween, making it the long Halloween. Is there's just these different murders going on throughout these different holidays and so on like that. And just the artwork's fantastic. The story itself, yeah, even with maybe that little bit of plot, it doesn't matter. There's so much good stuff going in here. Like, I feel like I didn't even notice that until you even really brought it up before. It's that kind of book that there's so much neat stuff in it, and just the way it's the classic detective kind of story of Jim Gordon and Batman really trying to solve this, you know, left and right, and not really making enough headway, and having to keep going through and trying to figure out, is it this guy, is it that guy? You get some red herrings here and so on like that. It offers a lot of great mystery and suspense almost throughout this book that, you know, a lot of times this is like the biggest thing that I feel like most of the movies don't capture the best. A lot of times is the detective part of Batman. You know, that's why that really the last one, the Batman, actually finally kind of got that pretty well in there. It's like, yeah, the detective part. That's a very important part of the story and so on like that. Most of them kind of fall. They got the superhero part going well. They got a lot of that stuff, but you know, they're missing that aspect. That what makes a great Batman comic book is sometimes it's like, what's the mystery he has to solve? Yeah, he's gonna punch some people in the face. That should be guaranteed. But you know, for the most part, like he's got to solve this crime, and this book's filled from the beginning and the end.
And going off what you said, like the Batman, even though that's probably one of the best Batman movies made, there's still only so much time you can get with even like a 3-hour movie that has a good amount of characters in it, but it doesn't have his entire roster of the time that was in this. And it's an early story. It takes place like the second year of like, I think his crime fighting, and like, so it's, but he still has a lot of villains in there. You have like, I think you have Mad Hatter for a minute. You have Joker, of course. You have the birth of Two-Face, more or less. Catwoman, Poison Ivy, Solomon Grundy, even Penguin, you know, a lot of big ones. So like just classic Batman villains, and the whole idea of it's over the course of a year. Each of these takes place on a holiday, just like such a cool. Even the sequel book, Haunted Night, is really good. But I remember Long Halloween having more of an impact, but Haunted Night was really good too.
Yeah, well, and that and Dark Victory as well too.
Not Haunted Night. Haunted Night's more of an anthology. Dark Victory is the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah. And then, there's kind of like four of them: Haunted Night, Dark Victory being the true sequel, and then the Catwoman one, When in Rome.
Which is fun too.
Yeah, all those ones are great. As I say, Dark Victory almost pairs up kind of nicely. Sometimes you can actually, I think there's a version out there you can buy nowadays where it literally is both those. It's Dark Victory and Long Halloween fused all in one book, which is kind of cool. I
might need to get that because this, like, I let someone borrow this. This is the original one I bought, but it's like, I'm holding it in place. Basically, the pages fall out if I open it up too much.
Oh, so. Yeah. Well, that's one of those books too. I have it. I literally have bought it multiple times because I have it physical, and then I also have the Kindle version as well too. So if I want to be able to have that book wherever I'm at, in a sense. I like it that much. Yeah, it's fantastic. So I guess that brings us to one. So our number ones. So it's your turn for number one. I know it makes it feel like you just rambled on, but there we go. We had the same number two. So, well, my number one. Not sure if you remember this one, but we covered this before. 4 kids walk into a bank. Oh, that's it. Yeah, we did talk about this one. We did a podcast on it, a long time ago. It's like 5 or 7 years ago. Yeah, let's not think about how long ago that might have been, but it was a while. I was living in San Francisco when we covered it. So, yeah. But that's a good one, though, too, because I really did enjoy that. I haven't technically read it since then, but I thought just it's fun. I love some of just like I like the witty comedy that's in that book. That was one of the stuff that stood out to me a lot. I guess the reason why it's number one is it's a book I open up and I can't find anything particularly wrong with it. And if I open it up, I'm more than likely going to sit there and read it for a second just because, oh yeah, this bit. Because like you could have like funny stuff in comics and kind of get like a quick little laugh. But this sincerely has so many just fucking funny throwaway things, both visual gags and just dialogue and just ways you don't expect. And if they're gonna like do like there's even a part where they're doing like a Star Wars like homage kind of like reenactment scene, but it's like one of those things where you think, okay, Star Wars, well, I'm your father, some bullshit like that. Like, no. It's the part when like they're on the radio, like, hi, we're fine here. How are you? Just like the idea of just like the pacing of the dialogue, you can just tell like, oh, this is they're homaging that part of all things. And I'm not saying that alone makes it good, but I'm just saying like if they're homaging something, they're not being so blatantly obvious with it, and it's an aspect that isn't homage too often. And I guess I should first off say what the story is for people who don't know. It's kind of like it's these kids, these 4 kids, takes place in the 80s. This one girl named Paige, her dad he had a life before he was a father. And some guys he used to run with are getting out of prison and saying, hey, you owe us. You have to go run a bank. You have to go rob a bank with us because you owe us. You can't. We did you got by. You got to have like your wife and your kid. And he's like a nice dad, but he's struggling. And the kid, his daughter is like, these guys are fucking idiots, Dad. You're gonna get you in jail. Like, no, you can't. I have to. We have no choice. Just don't worry about it. Everything's gonna be fine. So she and her friends all start to plan together. Like, okay, we got to get the money before them, because if they're gonna fuck this up, and we got to do it, because otherwise my dad's gonna go to jail. Because these guys are a bunch of bumbling fucking idiots, and we could even use that money to pay off and go start a new life somewhere and XYZ, that kind of thing. And the thing is, the kids in this circle of like, there's one kid in particular named Berger who is like basically the Eric Cartman of the group, but like that's my favorite character.
like there's just like he's just like the funniest fucking he's this little fucking shit. Like there's like nothing really redeemable or likable about him, but just something about just this stupid little fat fuck that just says his mind, and you just go, I don't know. It's just funny as shit. But anyway, so it's basically a heist. These kids all trying to plan this heist out, and it starts off as kind of like this thing where it is funny, but then you get to the end and you're just like, this is what would really happen. It's not a Goonies movie. It's not an Emblem movie. This is how it would happen, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, shit does get kind of real in there after that. But gosh, yeah. That's one of those ones, like, I almost need to read through that one again, too, because once again, I haven't read it since we did it for the podcast. But I do remember really liking that one a lot. As I said, I thought the humor stood out to me, like, a lot, especially that Burger Kid. Like he would just do funny fucking shit throughout there and so on like that. Well, he almost was that guy who just said things that weren't even fucking really real and so on like that, you know, and just, like, but he would just, like, spout it out like it was fucking truth, but he probably just pulled it literally out of his ass.
Well, the artwork is fantastic, and then it also has like this, like, it's similar art style to the artists who worked on like Matt Fraction's Hawkeye, like that kind of art style. Mm-hmm. You know, it has that kind of look to it. It might even be the same artist. I don't think it is.
I almost thought, I was gonna say, the second you mentioned that, I almost thought for some reason it might be, but I could be wrong. I can't remember what that dude's name is, but
yeah, I can't remember either. But like, and also, I don't think it's the same artist, but it is similar. There's also this thing where whenever they, like, the kids sit there to plan out the heist, they're almost talking, and you see, like, they're playing out action figures, and action figures are basically reenacting the heist, basically. And then once, like, one of them starts complaining, like, oh, hey, why do you get to be the Transformer? Like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm just the Transformer. Well, it's my fucking Transformer. Like, well, dude, I'm like, I will do it. The thing just suddenly fucking breaks. Give me a fucking rock now. Hey, you fucking asshole. Then he cuts back to, like, real time, you know? So, and then, like the other thing, I remember there's a part with Burger where, because he's a little Jewish kid, he has a little yarmulke, and I just preference for the following joke. He has to be a distraction. There's some cops, and the conversation the cops are having, like, hey, I was thinking of getting my kid, like, a Halloween present. Like, what? Like, a Halloween present? Like, the fuck's a Halloween a present for Halloween? I get the why the fuck would you do that? It's fucking weird, man. And all of a sudden, like I don't know, I don't know what it is, like a bird, like a rock or something hits their window, and he's like, hey, fuck you, pigs. He's all running away, and the cops just start chasing him down, like, hey, little fat kid, don't run too fast. You'll lose your stupid little Jew hat. You know, just like shit like that. Like, if you run too fast, you lose your stupid little Jew hat. It's just something like that. And then, like, they do, like, this thing where it's like this side, like, angle of, like, the Mario jump cycle. From in Mario 64, the, like, what is it?
1, 2,
like
3.
The 1, 2, 3, and the third jump. It's like, fuck you. You know?
Yeah, that's right.
And they literally do, because maybe there's a joke for millennials around that time. You know, it just sounds like he says "fuck you" on the third jump. So just a 1, 2, 3 hits trampoline, goes over a fence. It just says "fuck you," like trailing behind. So it's just like, so aside from all the comedy, just the artwork's fantastic, and the reason I have it as 1 is just because even though, like, I love Long Halloween, I could still find a couple little plot holes or glaring little, like, things like that. I can't find anything wrong with this book, and every time I open it, it just makes me happy.
No, that is a good one too, and yeah, I have that one, so I should go back and check that out. But well, if that one's your number 1, my number 1 here, this is pretty much my all-time favorite book out there. It's the one that literally inspired me to make comic books and to say, like, hey, you can draw, and just kind of had just a mixed match of all sorts of things that I love kind of all jammed in one, and that's the Scott Pilgrim comic book series. That's the one that I can always go back to, always puts a smile on my face. And if I had to just choose one book, I would just say you could just go for the first one. The first one there, it sets you off, but you get so much in one book there. It's like not only do you get kind of a fun kind of a almost like slice of life sitcom style book, but then it like mixes in like video game stuff as in more beat 'em up / fighting games at a time period where that was not a common thing one bit too. It was kind of a weird notion to have real life events that like have like video like game kind of like overlays to them. And then if that wasn't enough, it has movies, it has comic books, and then it also even has, music thrown in too. So it's like this like, culture like blending of so much stuff that makes you feel like, man, I wish I want to go hang out in Toronto. You know what I mean? I know if I went up there, it'd be such a disappointment. I know for a fact. He's like, well, it's nothing like Scott Pilgrim. Damn it, I thought this is what it was going to be like, but still, it made you want to
if I push people, coins don't appear.
Yeah, but just everything about that book. I love the characters, and even there is, the movie itself is still a decent adaptation, but it's just not exactly like the same experience you get from reading the book. Brian Lee O'Malley has always been that guy that if he has a new book out, like I'll drop everything to go pick it up and read it. And he doesn't have tons of stuff. Well, recently actually, Snot Girl finally came back because there was like a hiatus for like 4 years on that. I don't know what happened, but. It even says in the book too, we're like, we don't even know what happened. It's just, but here it is. Don't question it.
Well, going off what you said about like Scott Pilgrim itself, like it's that movie is fine. The movie's great. Like it's one of those movies you first see the movie, it's like, dude, that movie's fucking awesome. I love that movie. And then you stop and you go read the comic, and the comic adds so much to it. Like the movie is still great, and I can't really find a whole lot wrong with it. But after reading the comic, it's just like. Yeah, there's something missing,
Yeah, and it's just as I say, it captures it. But I mean, maybe it's because it's just longer and so on too. You can
more time for characters.
But
so many characters you don't get to meet in the movie that you meet in the comic.
Yeah, or at least if they're in the movie, they might just be there for a fraction. Where in the comic, they actually have parts to it and so on, and just the arc and everything about it. Plus, just the artwork. It's that perfect example of like. I guess because it's like, I'll say this, other books on our list, like if you look at Kingdom Come or you look at Batman Hush, I hate to sort of say it, that doesn't inspire me to want to draw one bit of those books. That's like that one, like, well, I didn't start when I was 2, so forget it, but like Scott Pilgrim was that one where you look at it and you go, I think I could do something like this. You know what I mean? I think it almost says like this is kind of possible. Once again, they always come out with those books like you wouldn't really give this to somebody as their first comic book. I feel they've, just if somebody isn't like into it, they would open it up and go, "What the hell's wrong with this artwork? This doesn't look very good." But like once you're kind of more into like deeper levels of comics and so on like that, you kind of appreciate it. And just just the mixed match of the humor in there, the fun, the romance, and even like once again mixing stuff all together. The video games, the anime, all this kind of stuff here because it has that vibe of like Ranma 1/2, mixes with River City Ransom, mixes with of course Street Fighter and all that kind of stuff. There's just so much neat things there, and the fact that these guys are in a band, and especially when the book I remember when just initially reading it was like I felt like I'm pretty much the same age as all these characters in here, so you like it just hit at the right moment where it's just like. You feel like I could relate, like you get it and so on like that. Maybe it'd be a little bit different if you came to this book and you were 10 years older than them. You'd probably still be like, that's good, but maybe you don't capture it as much. But it just hit at the right time. And then not only that, just inspired me to like say like, you know what, well, let's try something. Let's make something. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that book did come out. Like we read the book at like technically the book was coming out near the end of high school. By the time we sat down to read it, we were in our early 20s, and we were at basically that phase Scott is in his life. And even though we didn't live somewhere like that had a huge music scene like Toronto, we still like some of this type of stuff seemed familiar. Like the people you hung out with, you met up at parties or at bonfires and whatnot, and it's like. Plus, then you add in the whole thing of like you're talking about the video game references and deep cut music and comic book references, which weren't really common at the time. Now you throw a rock, it's there. Like, oh, Sonic the Hedgehog reference, cool. And then so you open a book, it's Sonic, they're referencing Sonic. And you open another page, they're referencing Streets of Rage. Oh, so it's just like one of these things where at the time, people were like, okay, good for you. You were born before like 2000. Like, well, like, just when you see it, when you're not used to seeing it, it's just one of those things. And plus, it's very simple, like you said, it's very simple artwork, but the artwork looks great. It makes you think like I could make something.
Yeah, it's another one like that there too. But to me, it's one of those ones that, to me, it hits on like all levels, and I just love the living daylights out of that book. And just at the series as a whole, I think it's one of those ones like I can always go back to it. It's so good, and just puts a smile on my face the way through, and that's why I just choose that as my number one there.
The reason I didn't have that on my list is because I actually don't own any of the Scott Pilgrim books. I borrowed them from you. So I haven't read them since when I first read them, but I remember they had a huge impact on me.
And those are another one too. I think they're kind of hard to find the black and white ones anymore too, because if you go out and buy them nowadays, they always just have the colored versions. And once again, not saying there's anything wrong with it, but sometimes there's something nice about having a traditional original, how the author meant it to be,
Yeah. But it just for $6.50, it just seems like, I might as well do something a little bit more, closer to home, I guess, or something a little bit more like, I don't know, it doesn't always have to be personal, but I guess it's something like, it feels like you do something different for $6.50,
Yeah, well, and I just think a countdown list of our favorite graphic novels and comic books and so on like that is a good way to go, because it's fun to sit down and think about, like, what are the ones that really stand out to you the most or had the best, like, impact on you growing up and so on there. And yeah, it's just that thing. I'm always reading through something new every single day, or rereading something old, but yeah, there's some of these ones here that I go back to quite often, and I always really enjoy. And yeah, hopefully if there's any of these books out there that you've never checked out or anything before, we'll look them on up, go over the old Amazon and see if you can find either a physical or a digital version or something like that, and take a read. There's some real special stuff, and yeah, like anything, that you could always have more and more stuff a list. It'd be fun, as you said, to just do a straight DC or a straight Marvel one, because I feel kind of bad because I actually didn't have a Marvel one on my list, This is kind of weird to think about, but especially it's weird because it's like I literally have just read probably 100 Marvel books in the last while, and I'm like I wasn't too sure which one I wanted to put on there.
You weren't too overly bombarded with DC stuff. You were a little bit more varied in your independent stuff too.
Yeah, I actually kind of did, because it's like I was just looking at my list. I have a couple mangas. I got I got 3 DC ones, I guess you could say, and then Watchmen, if you count that as one nowadays.
I'm kind of like,
yeah, my Southern Bastards and my Ninja Turtles and my well, then I guess I got Pokemon. Well, yeah, actually, mine's actually, it's literally 3 superhero books, 3 Japanese books, and 3 indie books, and then something else. Yeah.
I got,
and then Watchmen, maybe.
I got 3 Marvels, 3 DC books, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 non-DC or Marvel books. So, a little mixed up there. 2 Batman books in there too. Yeah.
But I think it'd be fun to go through some other little top 10s of just because once you kind of have a little parameter set, then you can pull out some stuff that you might not normally have on your list. That you'd be like, yeah, I really do like this a lot, and now I actually have a place for it to fit, and so on there. But
exactly, yeah.
But beyond all those good times in comics, well, check out more of the podcasts. You can find them on YouTube and Spotify. Till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Dunigan.
And we'll see you some other time.
Later, folks.